All right. I think we're live. Push one in the chat if you can hear me. All right, got a confirmation from the chat. Thank you for that confirmation and welcome back to the Black Brain Trust. This is episode, actually this is titled wrong. Sorry, just give me a second. Just realized this is titled wrong. Yeah, this is episode 577. Please hit the like button as you come in, share the video if possible, hit that notification bell so you get all the updates from the Black Brain Trust, from those posted on the community tab. There's a document description beneath the video for you to follow along with. If you want to engage in this discussion, there'll be a link in the chat for you to click on. When you click on the link, make sure you raise your hand so that one of us can acknowledge you and advance you to the panel. Just as an FYI, we're not certified financial planners. If you want a certified financial planner, please go to cfp.net and look up one in your area. We don't give out financial advice on this channel. All views expressed are the opinion of the commentator himself and does not represent the Black Brain Trust. So with that being said, let me give shout out to people who showed up first. Excalibur, salute. Brother Moses, peace to you. DJ B-Side, greetings as well. All right. Let me drop that link. Yeah, let's get started. Very slow to start today. All right, this was sent in by MOT. This is from CNN.com. A huge Wendy's and Pizza Hut franchise just filed for bankruptcy. What is going on? NPC International, the operator of 1,200 Pizza Hut and nearly 400 Wendy's restaurants in the United States, has filed for bankruptcy. The franchisee has been dealing with a perfect storm of problems that led to its Chapter 11 filing on Wednesday, including coronavirus-related shutdowns, a massive debt burden of nearly $1 billion in rising labor and food costs. Pizza Hut, of which NPC is the company's largest franchisee, has also been struggling with sales recently. NPC's restaurants will continue to operate while it navigates the Chapter 11 process. The company employs nearly 40,000 people in 27 states, according to its website. In a statement to CNN Business, Pizza Hut said the filing was expected and remains supportive of NPC. Yeah, you know, this is a sign of things to come. NPC is the latest U.S. company to file for bankruptcy during the COVID-19 pandemic. Chuck E. Cheese's parent company, GNC, 24 Hour Fitness, Neiman Marcus, J. Crew have filed for bankruptcy in the past 2 months. Yeah, this is a wrecking ball. You know, a lot of people don't realize that, you know, this pandemic is real. Okay, this is like a 9/11 style attack, if not a nuclear style attack on the the business community. You know, if you do not have an online presence, you will be severely impacted by this. Okay. Those who had an online presence survived. Those who did not fell victim. And so Wendy's and Pizza Hut franchisees just filed for bankruptcy. That doesn't happen out of nowhere. Okay. Let me let these people in. And so filing for bankruptcy doesn't necessarily mean they shut down, but they're trying to navigate the waters. Basically, they're looking for a life jacket at this point. And that's a lot of franchises and employees that they have under them. And so I don't know. I mean, it's only July now. I mean, we're far away from November and December. A lot of the calamity is going to come out. So we have Vivian and El Bromo on the panel. How are you doing? We have Vivian and El Bromo on the panel. How are you doing?
Hello, we're fine.
We have mute your feedback. And El Bromo on the panel. How are you doing?
Hello, we're fine.
Yeah, well, you have to stop the feedback in the background, or else it's gonna disrupt everyone who's listening to the replay and listen to the live stream too. So just mute the YouTube feed in the background.
Okay, you got it.
All right. All right, let me jump to the next item on the docket. Yeah, Engineering Cannabis says bankruptcy is just ways for companies to restructure. It's just ways for companies to restructure the company. Yeah, that's true. But the problem is, you wouldn't have to restructure your company if your business was doing well. That's usually signs of other troubles in the making. So. All right, this is from BusinessInsider.com. The most accurate tech analysis analyst on Wall Street says these 6 stocks have potential for huge gains as they transform the sector. Let's look at these tech stocks. What are the 6? MongoDB. I'm not surprised. Not surprised at all. MongoDB is very popular in enterprise. So Mongo stock has climbed about almost 80% this year. And that's one of the smaller gains on the list. Shopify. That's new to me. Didn't realize they were that hot in terms of the market. Twilio. I knew they were going to do something because in the enterprise sector, they're very popular. At least a up and coming term. To be used, Twilio. So Twilio has more than doubled in value this year. Big companies were flocking to it so they could do a better job of connecting with their customers. Yeah, they've been growing exponentially over the last year or so. Bill.com, most small businesses still write checks. And that means there's gigantic market for Bill.com's automation service that helps explain why the stock has rallied 143% in 2020. Yeah, everybody is looking to automate processes. So this was never on my radar, but I guess based on the caption, it makes sense. Viva Systems. Viva Systems is up 72% this year. The company's praised services as well as its high profit margins and growth potential. They just, in the last 5 years, not only kind of automated and modernized the front office for life sciences companies, but now they are automating the back offices as well. Never followed them before. Coupa Software. Coupa stock has soared 96% so far this year. Rayson said that, like a few other companies on the list, its products are strong enough that they are starting to overcome businesses' reluctance to change their conservative spending habits. They are automating the procurement process for a large enterprise, he said. Bill.com is automating the back office for small businesses. I think Coupa as automating the back office for large enterprise. And that makes a lot of sense. I don't follow Coupa, but it does make a lot of sense. And so that's what we've been talking about for quite some time on this channel, that automation was going to come in during the pandemic, and they were going to start ramping it up now with everyone working from home. When I went back into the office last week, or this week, I should say, Tuesday, they had body scanners to check your temperature as you came into the office, and it actually can get a full image of your face and log you in, okay, and then put you into this sort of system that says your body temperature is 98.6%, 98.6 degrees Fahrenheit. And so this is what they're doing. There was nobody in the office, okay? The system logged me in. This is very much in the future right now. I mean, 6 months ago, we weren't even talking about this. Now this is a discussion. That's how fast the industry changes. And a lot of Black people were unable to adapt to those changes because they work in the service sector where there are essential line workers, and potentially their job could be replaced just like that. All right, let me jump to the next item on the docket. We'll fly right through these as well. All right, this is from Business Insider. Lululemon just spent $500 million during the recession to acquire a startup that catapulted into the home fitness arena, and analysts say it may be a bargain. Yeah, I'm not surprised at this. Somebody was gonna get bought out during this whole entire thing. I'm into fitness. You know, I posted videos of me working out and talking about fitness before. I was at Dick's recently, and there's nothing in the store. Okay, nothing. Everything is empty, and this is like the most popular store in the region, and nothing is there. You can't even get a yoga mat. Everything is gone. People have just went nuts and with their credit cards and just bought up everything that's in sight. No plates, no nothing. Not even standardized weights you can buy. You can't buy anything. I think the only thing that was there, they had gloves, but people typically don't buy multiple pair of gloves. You know, they kind of use the same set that they have, but there's nothing in the store. Everyone is scrambling to work from home. Work out from home, outfit their garages. I've been seeing people going down to Home Depot, buy 2x4s and create their own, squat racks and things like that. People are improvising now. The idea of going into a gym and working out with a mask on your face and PPE sort of style gloves, it's just not the business. It's not the business for working out. Who wants to work out with a mask on their face? It's a disaster. I see gyms, taking it, below the belt at this point, man. I don't think gyms are going to survive throughout the summer. Not with these second wave and third wave of COVID-19 cases coming up. Who really wants to be that close? I mean, most people think they can't catch it, but we're seeing more cases crop up. So I don't know what to tell people. I won't be going to a gym. I can reassure you that much. I have enough equipment in my basement that I bought last year and the year before that, where I didn't have to worry about a pandemic coming down like this. It's crazy. Even New Balance is running out of sneakers. Okay, I mean, imagine that New Balance is running out of sneakers because so many people are buying workout sneakers to work out in. All right, let me jump to the next item on the docket. All right, this is from Bloomberg.com. The Dying Mall's new lease on life, apartments. I mean, we've talked about this in the past about what to do with these big, gigantic malls that are empty now. It's definitely, finally, without a doubt, the end of malls, right? The multiple crises impacting the U.S. economy, the botched response to the coronavirus and the resulting economic fallout and lack of spending power have delivered a new gut punch to brick and mortar retail, a sector that was already reeling. More than half of the U.S. department stores in malls will be gone by 2021. Imagine that. More than half of U.S. department malls will be gone by 2021. That's next year. It's July now. We're in the 7th month of the year. And they're talking about by 2021, they'll be gone. It's going to be like the book of Eli, where, you're walking around and everything's dilapidated. One real estate research firm predicts surviving retailers may not be far behind. Once mighty brands such as Cheesecake Factory and The Gap are skipping rent payments, Starbucks is closing physical locations. And developers see a future for big box stores as office complexes. I mean, imagine that. The Cheesecake Factory and The Gap are skipping rent payments, but yet they want to evict Black people out of their houses. Make it make sense. And developers see a future for big box stores as office complexes. Banks fear a stampede of landlords looking to restructure loans after commercial tenants missed their rents. Last week, the Trump administration floated the idea of turning the glut of empty retail space into affordable housing. At the Alderwood Mall in Linwood, a suburb north of Seattle, an adaptive reuse project already in progress suggests that America's vast stock of fading shopping infrastructure could indeed get a second life as places to live. Such transformation could even bring malls closer to the village square concept they were initially envisioned to become. Developers are turning a wide swath of 41-year-old shopping center into Avalon Alderwood Place, a 300-unit apartment complex with underground parking. The project won't completely erase the shopping side of the development. Commercial tenants will still take up 90,000 square feet of retail, but when the new Alderwood reopens, which developers expect will happen by 2022, the focus will have shifted dramatically. One of the mall's anchor department stores, Sears, shut down last year, and it's since the apartment complex will be the new anchor. Yeah, this makes sense. I mean, we've been talking about this for a while. There was a mall in Pennsylvania somewhere. I can't remember where it is. We covered this about a couple years ago. That mall sold for $1,000. Okay, 1 million square feet, 984,000 square feet sold for $1,000 on the market. What they did with the space, I don't know. Maybe there was a lot of back taxes and liens and things like that they had to pay off. But the point that I'm making here is that people see the writing on the wall, at least from a corporate perspective. It's time to get out and get out while the getting is good. If you don't have an online presence now, you are screwed. There is no coming back from this. Okay. When you got big, big corporations that are traded on the stock, publicly traded on the stock market, missing rent payments, acting like deadbeats, basically squatting in their space. The writing is on the wall. Something bad is coming. Okay, something bad is coming. El Bromo, you have anything you want to add to this?
Yes, good evening. How's everyone?
Good, brother. Good.
the one thing that I take note of in that discourse that you read was they're talking about he mentioned the misuse or mishandling of the virus and how this has affected everything business wise. The United States was attacked with a biological weapon.
Allegedly, brother.
Pardon?
Allegedly.
Allegedly? Well, allegedly would be saying who did it, but we know that we were attacked with a virus, and it is a biological weapon. The virus itself is biological, and if it attacks and harms you, it's a weapon. So we were attacked. Now, it's allegedly who masterminded it, who brought it into existence, who transported it, or all of that. But the virus had the ability to severely cripple the United States and devastate our economy, and boost some trends that have been occurring. We talk about these malls closing, business going out under. We know that there's one major firm that would love it if everyone had to buy online. You know, the world's largest online retailer has really prospered during this virus. So the point I'm making is that there were some trends that were in effect, that were already taking place, that was leading America somewhat off of a cliff. And this most recent travesty accelerates some of those trends and put us even in a more precarious position. So I'm glad to hear us discuss exactly what is happening and what's going on, and hopefully start looking at what we can do to bring back small business, entrepreneurship, and economic development, which is the backbone of what this country is about. And realize that these large global conglomerate businesses do not necessarily have the best interest of the American people in mind as far as their plan and what they're bringing about. So that's my reaction. Is just that these trends were in place. The virus somewhat accelerated the timetable, and I'm really, really proud of how the United States reacted to the virus. I think we handled it tremendously. We shut down our society. We shut down our schools. We shut down our entertainment and quarantined, and basically avoided a disaster of unbelievable proportions. We could have had millions of people died from this. So I'm grateful that we had the effective leadership and that we responded and have more or less dodged an unbelievable travesty. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. And it's interesting that you mentioned the handling of it as being acceptable. Many would argue that it was not acceptable, especially in the Black community. It was not acceptable to them. Many Black people were sent home from ER with the infection and left to die at home for the most part. In New York, this was a rampant issue. I know in Boston, it's still a rampant issue here. A lot of people basically just suffering with it and not having any sort of treatment or anything. In fact, a lot of people are just dropping dead from it, which is a shame on the part of the United States government that they could spend $14 billion on aircraft carriers, but could not even keep up infrastructure in the event of a pandemic. You're talking, some of these places only had about 80 beds. You need at least 600 beds to absorb something like this, and you didn't have anything in place. Although you make that statement, there's a lot of people who would disagree with you on that. But we won't argue about that tonight.
Can I just say one point of clarity?
Yes,
is that when you're at the bottom of the totem pole, the American Blacks are sort of like an underclass. A lot of whites have been pushed into a second-class citizenship by corporate greed. But corporate greed is a push, and this society has pushed blacks into almost an underclass. So yes, it's without saying, anything that affects America in a negative way has a multiplied effect upon Black America. The virus was killing Americans. Yes, the effect on Black Americans is going to be even more greater and expanded somewhat exponentially because we are at the bottom. We get the least amount of services, the least amount of attention, the least amount of care, the least amount of funding. So that's indicative of all of America's existence. We are at the bottom. We are going to suffer. Anything America suffers, anything that happens to America is going to be felt even more so in our community and among us. That's the story of our 300 years here. And so whatever when we speak of whatever America did or didn't do, we can always go in and show how we had the least amount of benefit or the least amount of hardship from whatever perspective you're looking at.
Mm-hmm. All right, let me jump to the next item on the docket. This is from howmuch.net. The U.S. has enormous racial wealth gap. White workers across all educational levels on average take home more money than African Americans with similar experience and education levels. Our three newest visualizations reveal the extent of the problem across the country by focusing on the differences in median income between white and African Americans. Oh, they want you to buy it. Mm-hmm. Wyoming is the only state in the country where the median income for African American workers is higher than that of white workers. Interesting. This is very likely due to how sparsely populated the state is. Washington, D.C. and Wisconsin are the two places with the worst median income gap, 66.88% and 51.25% respectively. There's a noticeable cluster of states with median income gaps over 40% across both the Rust Belt and Deep South, indicating that racial inequality is an issue everywhere in America, not just in the South. The place with the lowest gap between African American and white workers is in the Northwest, where median incomes for white people are still more than 25% higher than African American counterparts. We found the numbers behind our map and visualization from the American Community Survey by the U.S. Census Bureau. We took median income figures by ethnicity for 2018 with the latest year for which complete numbers were available. Median income includes anybody earning money 16 years old or older, calculated on the basis of a standard distributions. So the blue dot represents African American or Black, and I guess magenta would represent white. So let me scroll down. I mean, this is enormous right here in DC. You're talking 45,000 in comparison to 136,000. That's enormous. It looks like the biggest in the country as well, which is interesting. Let me look at Massachusetts. Yeah, this is pretty normal, 53.3 thousand compared to 83.1 thousand for whites. And this could be in the same industry as well, not uncommon. Corrupt places like the MBTA and the commuter rail, Keolis, those places where they disproportionately look out for white people's best interests over blacks in Massachusetts. So, where's some of the larger numbers? Rhode Island, okay. South Carolina, I mean, I'm not overly surprised at that, but let me advance this person. DE Raptor Shalom. Where's New York? I'm trying to find New York. Okay. 48,000 for an African American or black compared to 76,000 for a white person. I don't know. I don't know what to make of these numbers. The top 10 worst places for African American and white medium income inequality: Washington, D.C., Wisconsin, number 2, Minnesota is 3, Louisiana is 4th, Iowa is 5. I didn't even know black people lived in Iowa. Number 6 is Mississippi, number 7 is Ohio, number 8 is Illinois, and number 9 is Michigan, and number 10 is South Carolina. I just spoke about that a few seconds ago. A few things stand out about our chart and map right away. For starters, Wyoming is the only state where the median income for African American workers is higher than for white workers. A close look at the underlying data reveals that Wyoming is the least populous state in the country, with less than 600,000 people, according to the most recent figures from U.S. Census Bureau. And in fact, only 1.29% of that population is African American. Again, according to the census. In short, Wyoming is an outlier. The real story is both devastating and informative of just how large the racial gap is when it comes to earning an income. The median income for white workers is larger, and in some cases significantly larger than the median income for African Americans in every state except Wyoming. Although Washington, D.C. has the single largest measurable median wage gap between whites and blacks at 66.88%, Wisconsin has the single biggest of any state in the country at 51.25%. Where are all the people from Washington, D.C.? I thought they, I thought this was supposed to be, a progressive area for African Americans. I don't live there, never lived there, so I'm trying to figure out how did a place where black people dominate in numbers is not reflected in the median household income. El Bromo, you were going to say something?
Well, when you look at DC, it reflects a lot of realities across the country. In cities that we dominate in numbers, we dominate the political apparatus. We have some of the worst disparities in our lifestyle and in comparison. The one thing I want to reflect on is we're constantly comparing ourselves to our white counterparts, whites versus blacks. And we know that we're at the bottom. I think that I just want everyone to reflect on a bigger issue is you're white on top of you and you're both being pushed down and drowning. This is what is happening in America right now. The America itself, our middle class is being devastated. Our schools are disorienting and miseducating our children. America is under attack. Our whole system is being questioned and undermined. And as long as we continue to reflect just on our relationship to whites, we will not be able to see the forces that are pushing us down and them down. It just happened that they're ahead of us. And the racism that's inflamed in the whites it's the same thing. It's a two-edged coin. We're being resentful of seeing how we're still behind them. And the farther they get pushed down, the more they want to make sure that they're still above us. And that goes all the way back to slavery. The only thing the white people had, poor whites had during slavery, was that they were white and they weren't slaves. Some of them couldn't feed themselves. They didn't have anything going for them other than, I'm white. With the slaves had skills, they had jobs, and they were basically free labor. How could anybody compete against free labor? So there are forces that are keeping this constant conflict between whites and blacks or trying to keep it, because what we've seen with most recent events is that there's tremendous national empathy for the Black existence and for our struggle and what we've gone through. And there's just a lot of people trying to figure out how to make things better. Unfortunately, we have to be careful not to let other people co-opt this goodwill that we have coming towards us and use it for their own purposes. You know, the conflict between us and whites should be a conflict for us to join whites and attack and undermine these repressive forces that's undermining our ability to have a better life.
DE Raptor, can you hear us?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Do you have any? You want to?
I keep having a problem with my audio and my video. Trying to throw out this computer.
Are you on the latest version of Zoom?
I don't know. Could that be the case?
Yes. 5.1.1 is the latest update. So make sure you update your Zoom.
Well, I better go update it then. I'll be back.
All right.
All right. Thanks.
All right.
Let me say, I think we have an unbelievable opportunity with what is going on right now for a unification and a joining of like-minded Blacks and whites to really have a tremendous impact on the issues that we're concerned about. The things that we know are wrong and unjust in society. This is a unique opportunity for us to project leadership, because the reality is it's a tremendous desire for direction and leadership, and white people have subliminally been conditioned and prepared to seek an answer from us. When I was a very young man in advertising in the 80s, the government was instituting some plans to bring Blacks into advertising. I was one of those that came in, and what was happening is companies were saying, we can't advertise, we can't have Blacks, and because our clients don't want Blacks and our clients don't feel like they can represent their products. But the research was indicating that, Mr. CEO, I hate to tell you this, but Blacks have a tremendous influence on your bottom line. If Blacks like Cadillacs, white people buy Cadillacs. If Black like this product over here, they're going to automatically influence a certain portion of the society. So you really do want to get Blacks to like your products. And it was a tremendous awakening for an element of corporate America. And we've seen that over the years, advertising has really taken on a cultural bend to appeal to us. The message I'm saying is that there's a tremendous, our culture, our existence, our struggle has had a tremendous impact on America. And they are looking to us day in and day out. Even the guy that sits next to us at job, or the guy that was over there in the jungle in Vietnam, who had never been with a Black person before, but all of a sudden he's in the jungle and he's seeing the character and the strength and the courage of this young Black boy, and just changed his whole persona. So I'm saying that it's going on, and this is a unique opportunity for individuals like ourselves, who are leaders in our own communities and our own families, to go ahead and start shining a light, start standing up. We know there's wrong. Everybody knows there's wrong. Everybody knows there's hardship. Everybody knows there's injustice. But we can take a lead position in helping people make the decisions to change it, because they believe in us. They are looking to us for leadership. Hopefully that leadership won't be some of these negative elements that are being misused out in the streets and everything, but individuals who have the ability to articulate and understand what is going on. I'm saying that we can bond and we can do this if we just understand the key role we have in and how attuned America is to what we've suffered. I'm just trying to get a feel for how what I'm saying is coming across. Do you see it as a passivism or a naivety? Do you see a real opportunity here for, it's what I'm saying, for us to more or less take a leadership role in this society?
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with taking the leadership role for Black people. I think that, Black people should be on the forefront, putting all the issues on the table right now as we speak. Really putting down a 10-point item or agenda as to what they expect from their political leaders, as well as their government, as well as their community organizers. Because each city and each state and each region have different issues that impact people. So that should be taken into account. But let's let Nagone 11 come on. I know he's been listening in since he's been idle. Nagone, do you have anything you want to add to this?
I know, I just got in here a minute ago, and I kind of wanted to get a little bit more information on the conversation. I heard what this brother was just saying, and I certainly do agree with a great deal of what he had to say. I certainly did, and I think that there are some other things I probably would like to add in, but I'd like to kind of hear a little bit more on the conversation. I was just doing a few things. I just got in here, so I'll chime in a few minutes if that's fair.
All right. Well, basically, what we're talking about now is the income inequality gap that was posted this week. I think DE Raptor or somebody sent this in. It shows this map of, or at least a visualization of Black versus white income per capita, the differences, and it shows in places like New York here. 40, for a Black person with same level of education, et cetera, 48,000 compared to a white making 76,000 in New York.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So go ahead. You gonna say something else? Go ahead, because I'll.
Yeah, and in DC has the most massive gap. At 45,000 for a Black person and 136,000 for a white person. And we're talking about same levels of education. I find this to be very interesting and kind of damaging to how America prides itself from a branding standpoint of all this equality and stuff that they talk about. In reality, that doesn't exist. I'm in Massachusetts, so I can tell you firsthand. It's like an apartheid state. This is like a modern day South Africa for all intents and purposes, and they prefer it to be that way. I was in Joburg, so that's why I'm using that reference, because I saw how Black people lived there under whites, and you still see some of the racial struggles there, even though whites only make up less than 10% of the population there, and Black people make up 88 or 85% of the population there. It's kind of weird that can even take place in a modern day form.
Well, I think once again the inequality piece comes down to where a lot of wealth is actually beginning to certainly calcify. And now, Mike, are we talking about household income or wealth, or is this from a jobs perspective?
Racial wealth gap in America, that's the title of it, but they're also talking about racial income inequality in the United States. Okay. So they're talking about household income right now.
Okay, household income. Yeah. Well, I think that, ultimately it comes down to two jobs. It comes down to what positions many whites are getting who are moving up into, let's say, higher senior management roles, to where Blacks, if you are coming out with a degree, you're coming in basically at a lower level, and you're staying there, as to where many of them are getting promoted and are moving up, or maybe you're making lateral and sideways moves that are not really having you move up and up the management structure, which these are policies within companies that are keeping you out. Certainly, when I look at investment banks like Morgan and so forth, very few Black people are there. The few who are there make a few dollars, but very few people are in there are managing, managing directors and so forth. So you're looking at some very, a lot of key areas, even in technology, which I find a little bit disturbing. I have some very good recs that I have got come through. I have almost no Black applicants really that come in and apply for a lot of these positions. So I don't see a lot of us getting into some of these key higher paying types of positions. So we are in many respects not in some of these other in these key areas that we need to be into. If you have a degree, okay, this guy's got a degree. They may have a degree, but what is your degree in? If you're a Black person, you have a degree in history, you have a degree in political science, and somebody else that may have a degree in MIS, okay, or in engineering, that's going to be a huge difference in income. Huge difference in income. So we really have to look at kind of where we are positioned here. And New York is a big tech center, and we do have certainly Black technical people who are in this tech arena, and they're doing well. We don't have enough of them. That's why here at the Brain Trust we talk about getting many more involved in this area. But certainly in other areas of very high level sales, and you say in the advertising arena and a lot of these other places, we don't have a lot of us at the highest levels either. So it really is coming down to our vertical integration into a lot of these areas, and that's still a real issue. And it also shows you that there's still a lot of resistance to you. So we still have quite a ways to go in that regard.
Yeah, and it's interesting that you bring up the educational part, because in my experience in being in IT, I've seen white counterparts come in with degrees in, archaeology or something like that, and get placed into IT roles just based on the fact that they have a degree. So It's not so much that they have a degree in computer science or information systems, that just the fact that they're white and they have some form of academic achievement, post-secondary wise, to speak to. I've also seen white people with no degree at all get hired for roles over Black people with a degree. This is a very still a significant issue. I mean, we've read an article I think earlier this week where a Black woman from who graduated from Oxford was getting paid significantly less than her white female counterpart in a tech organization like Pinterest. This shouldn't even be happening, but it's still happening in 2020. And so I don't know if education really plays that level of a role, in terms of where they went to school and things of that nature. Because it seems to me,
Mike,
yeah.
The only reason why I bring that up is because, if you're Black and you're looking to get into a tech company, a lot of times, especially where let's say there's a degree required and you're looking to get into a certain position, they're going to want you to be supra qualified, where the other individual we're talking about, the other side of the fence, is going to have a more or less a white manager or somebody like that who might be in there, hiring them. They're gonna need to have less. They can get in there with less, and that's just the privilege that they're going to get over you. So that's why I say education at times for us does play a role in getting certain positions than others. If you have a technical degree and you have a strong technical background, that might fare better for you. It might, but not to say that it will. But because we know how this game is played as well.
All right, let's jump to the next item on the docket. DE Raptor, is your mic working now?
Can you hear me, or you still can't hear?
We can hear you.
Okay, before I wasn't getting audio on my speakers. I couldn't hear you. I couldn't hear what's going on at all. But it seems like everything is working fine. I downloaded the new upload.
Okay. All right, let's jump to the next item on the docket from Bloomberg.com. The coming wave of coronavirus evictions will wipe out Black renters. A study of eviction filings in Boston showed that in most cases, now suspended by a state level moratorium, are in African American immigrant neighborhoods. I'm very much aware of this. I'm very familiar with this this area myself. Even as coronavirus case counts continue their ominous rise across the U.S., protections to stall evictions in U.S. states are slipping away. Eviction bans in the 5 states expire on July 1st, leaving only a few places with protections that extend beyond the end of the federal eviction moratorium this month. Sorry, I had to mute somebody real quick. One of them is Massachusetts, whose moratorium extends until at least August 18th. So tenants in Boston have more time to prepare for the pandemic than most. Boston also has a clearer picture of where evictions will hit hardest once these cases resume. A new study paints a severe portrait of disparity. Eviction cases filed since the start of the pandemic are overwhelmingly located in majority Black neighborhoods. The study from researchers at the Massachusetts Institute of Technology predates the COVID-19 crisis, which hit Boston relatively early thanks to the super spreader event at the Biogen conference in late February. The researchers set out to map housing instability in predominantly African-American neighborhoods such as Roxbury or Mattapan, as well as immigrant communities in Chinatown and East Boston. But when Massachusetts Governor Charlie Baker ordered a moratorium on evictions in April, the research fundamentally shifted. Between March 1st and April 20th, landlords still filed hundreds of eviction cases. That 7-week interim offers a window into the pandemic eviction crisis. According to the MIT study, 78% of Boston eviction cases currently suspended by the moratorium were filed in majority minority neighborhoods. As businesses closed and workers were laid off, landlords in Roxbury and Dorchester moved to evict the most tenants before it was clear what kind of support or regulations would be made available. This research shows that communities of color eviction hubs, even under normal times, are already being the disproportionate burden of the pandemic housing crisis. Those evictions are frozen until courts resume hearing, but when the cases thaw, it will be Black and immigrant households who are subject to displacement. Unemployment claims in Massachusetts are higher than they have been since the Great Depression, with an estimated 21% of renter families across the state unable to afford housing costs, the study reads. In the first 5 days of the City of Massachusetts COVID-19 Emergency Rental Assistance Fund opening, 5,500 Boston renters applied, indicating the huge need for help paying for housing. Low-income people of color who often work hourly jobs and pay more of their income on housing costs to begin with are especially at risk of losing their housing. The report from MIT and City Life Vida Urbana, a Boston grassroots organization, examines the structural factors that threaten to exacerbate the damage from the pandemic. Along with the data on evictions in Boston, the paper also presents a detailed history of racial segregation in Boston, from the new pre-deal restrictive covenants in the 1920s to exclusionary restrictions of multifamily zoning today. Along with this timeline of pitfalls of America's discriminatory housing policy, the report also boasts a rather more unique history of resistance in Boston. It covers efforts to mobilize against urban renewal in the South End and Roxbury in the 1960s. The successful campaign to prevent Massachusetts from building the Inner Belt Highway in 1972. And movements to introduce tenant protections and expand home ownership opportunities from the 1980s through the present day. In some ways, the study reveals the routine reality of evictions in Boston. Between 2010 and 2019, Boston landlords filed nearly 55,000 eviction cases. at a steady clip of about 5,500 evictions per year. While this number might sound extraordinary, it lands Boston near the middle of the pack of large U.S. cities. This figure includes legal evictions only. The study points to an unknowable number of illegal actions that landlords use to threaten, lock out, or otherwise displace tenants. The invisible dark matter that makes up most evictions. According to Matthew Desmond's Evicted, informal evictions in Milwaukee outnumber legal evictions 2-1. Dr. Phoenix brought up this book before, so shout out to Dr. Phoenix for bringing that up. The detailed picture of displacement in Boston also revealed trends and patterns that are likely to apply in cities beyond Beantown. MIT's David Robinson, Justin Steele, and Patricia Cafferty surveyed Boston Housing Court evictions records from 2014 to 2016 for patterns. They found that small property owners who live in their buildings are less likely to evict their tenants. And eviction filings are more common in older neighborhoods with lower property values. Within a single census tract, market rate evictions are more common still in newer or recently remodeled buildings than in older buildings, the study finds. This is a clue for policymakers looking to stop evictions before they reach the courthouse. Are property owners with higher value in newer properties more likely to evict because they can lease the property to higher income tenants or convert their rental units to higher value condominiums? The study asks, are low income renters in higher value in newer buildings more rent burden and therefore more likely to face eviction than tenants in the same neighborhood who pay less in rent? With 6 weeks to go until the eviction moratorium ends, lawmakers in Massachusetts still have the time to craft policies to save renters in Black and immigrant neighborhoods in Boston from displacement and homelessness. Federal leaders could step up in as well. Senator Elizabeth Warren is already on the case. I bet she is. 6 weeks might not seem to be a lot of time to head off a catastrophic catastrophe. Sorry, but it's more notice. It's more notice than renters in most states will get. So I spoke about this earlier about Boston being an apartheid sort of state or sort of city place. It's this article is highlighting this. It's really starting to touch on it, that they purposefully stick Black people in these areas and then kind of bump them around when it's convenient for them. And unfortunately, most Black Bostonians are pretty powerless. You don't have any sort of representation in office, and they do that on purpose. You know, they sabotage anybody who tries to run for office, and basically, it's like an open air prison for Black people. It's unfortunate. They live like Palestinians in many ways, outside of living in mud huts and things like that, or tin-foil roofs. They definitely live very similarly, where they're internally displaced, at least according to the United Nations. They're being internally displaced with these evictions, and then kicking them out on the street. And there's never a time where I can drive through neighborhoods in Boston and I can see on trash day, 8 to 10 feet of this beds and trash and toys and stuff being put out there because someone got evicted. And next thing you know, they done flipped it and flipped the apartment into a condo, and they sold it to some maybe a white couple or something like that, or some other investor. And next thing you know, the neighborhood is littered with white people that were never there 5 years earlier. So it's unfortunate, but that's the sort of BS that's going on here. All right, let me jump to the next item on the docket. All right, this is from InsideSources.com. Vivian sent this in. If Black lives really matter, end H-1B visa giveaways. We gotta expand this out. Rebuffing pleas and threats from tech CEOs and establishment graybeards from Silicon Valley to Cambridge, Massachusetts, as well as some of his swampier advisors. Last week, President Trump moved to suspend several temporary work visa programs. His goal is to give U.S. workers first crack at the hundreds of thousands of jobs normally taken by foreign workers. Taking place against the backdrop of an emotional national discussion on lingering racism in our society, this move will do more to boost the socioeconomic prospects for Black and Latino Americans than all statute toppling and virtue signaling coming from the left. The latest proclamation covers 4 of the major temporary work visa categories. These 4 programs bring in about 600,000 foreign workers annually. Wow, I didn't know that. For everything from landscaping, childcare, manufacturing, and vacation resort jobs to higher end white collar office jobs, especially information technology and business process jobs. With 16 million Americans and 4 million immigrants now unemployed due to the pandemic shutdown, it's just common sense to divert jobs that normally would be filled by temporary visa workers to sideline U.S. workers. You would think America's biggest employers would be on board, but instead they have fought to maintain the current visa worker pipeline. The big tech companies who employ the most H-1B guest workers are the most irate. Twitter took to its own platform to complain. The proclamation undermines America's greatest economic asset, its diversity. People from all over the world come here to join our labor force, pay taxes, and contribute to our global competitiveness on the world stage. Silicon Valley companies have been among the loudest in condemning systemic racism and pledging millions of dollars to social justice organizations in Black Lives Matter. For example, Intel CEO Bob Swan recently posted this statement: "To our Black employees and communities inside and outside Intel, I hear you and see you. Now, not apparently in the personal office." Vivian Ibrahim, a Black American science, technology, engineering, mathematics grad with 15 years of award-winning experience in the government and private sector IT work, says she has been shut out of job opportunities because of a glut of foreign visa workers. Black Americans have been pushed so far back and down in the tech industry that we appear invisible or non-existent. Ibrahim attributes this to the government's failure to rein in the H-1B program, leading to the dominance of Indian-owned tech staffing companies that hire mainly their fellow citizens at low wages and place them in jobs that were being done by Americans. Indeed, a recent Los Angeles Times article that delved into the staff diversity at big tech companies found that a career in U.S. tech is functionally barely open to U.S. Blacks and Hispanics. At least 4 tech staffing companies, Cognizant, Tata, Infosys, and Wipro, who are all at the top of the list of H-1B visa sponsors, have been sued recently for alleged discriminatory employment practices. 80 to 99% of the employees of the companies are South Asian, although only 1% of the US population and 12% of the US IT workforce is South Asian, according to court filings. Further, the American workers were far more likely to be passed over for promotions or laid off than Indian visa workers. No doubt there are a variety of reasons for the underrepresentation of US minorities in the tech industry, but it's not due to the lack of qualified candidates. 12% of US STEM graduates are African American, so clearly there are American Blacks willing and able to fill these jobs. Trump's proclamation addresses one key factor that the government can and should control, which is the flow of workers from abroad. Big tech employers should be pressured to compete for qualified Black, Latino, and female STEM grads the way the colleges competed for their enrollment. That won't happen as long as there is a constant stream of cheaper visa workers. So Vivian Ibrahim sent this in. Congratulations to her for pushing this agenda all this time. We talked about this many times on this channel. She's been very instrumental in this, as well as her husband, El Bromo. Vivian, you have anything you want to add to this?
Hello, everyone.
Hey, how are you?
Okay. As I had stated in a couple of previous Black Brain Trust calls, that I had been working heavily on behalf of Black America, and the Albermo and I were approached about giving our perception of what exactly is going on in the Black community when it comes to H-1B and J-1, L-1, B-1, B-2, all of it, EB-5, you name it. It's a whole alphabet soup of visas. He was approached from the IT entrepreneurship startup businesses side, and I was approached from the, okay, how do you feel, Black IT executive? What are you doing? What's going on here in Black America? And basically they took a little bit more of what I said than what he said, but yeah, they're working on what he said as well. But the main key thing that I wanted to try to bring forth in what I stated was the fact that right now, Blacks are basically being treated as untouchables, invisible, not there, even though we are here. And we graduate just as many STEM graduates as other colleges. Our HBCUs kick butt. However, we are not being hired in these executive positions. We're barely being hired in the manager positions. And we are just totally unrepresented in IT. We have been squeezed out of manufacturing, landscaping, even restaurants, hotels. And it's actually an American thing that's going on, because guess what? The same thing is happening to the white folks. That's why they called on me. They said, hey, can you help us? The Black community, we're getting no help from Black America. And this is an American problem because all of these visa people are over here. And then you have all of the illegals on the other side, the Mexicans coming up and taking the jobs as well. So I said, hey, enough is enough. I've had it, because of the simple fact I come from dealing with the government and the private sector. The government is even worse, because the government is the largest employer in the world. And that's where I had a problem with it, because as I stated before, our taxes, if it doesn't even matter whether you're dealing with the government or not or whatever, you still pay federal taxes. Yep. So it does affect all of us. And that's what I was fighting on behalf of. The lady that wrote this article, she actually approached me and got me involved. I had no idea that back in the summer of 2019, that I would be going to the Trump administration on behalf of Black America saying, look, I'm sorry, our older leaders, they haven't gotten on board with the IT and the manufacturing thing, or either they've been bought or whatever. I don't care, but our young folks need us. Need me to be here and be a leader and speak on their behalf. And we're being shut out everywhere. And the trickle down effect is what you talked about earlier, Mike, as far as the salaries, the money inequity, us being thrown out at higher rates, us not being able to start businesses. We can't hire our own Black people. I would be more than happy to go into the hood and grab me about 5 or 6 brothers and say, hey, I want to take you out of that life. Let's go do this. Because Black will do that. White will not. A Black business will do that more than a white business will. I also have had the problem with the contracts. The federal contracts that used to go to us no longer go to us. And so now we're gearing up and speaking to that effect. El Bromo, did you want to jump in and say anything?
I want to say something very quickly. I hear what you're saying, Vivian, and I think to a large extent you're very right about a lot, especially when it comes to the upper level management game of in IT, where you have people who are in director roles, or people who are in CT of chief technical officer roles, or people who are in a senior, more executive management. A lot of Black people do not tend to get there. We're harshly underrepresented And then we get in that kind of, base levels in these companies, and we tend to stay there a lot longer as well, or get moved out, and then you make a lateral move to another company.
Yes, yes.
And when you see that lateral move go down, these, you don't move up as quickly. So would I have to agree with that? Yes. I am, I have a couple of roles right now that I just recently got in IT, and one of them is more of a senior machine learning role, and I'm actively looking for Black executives to kind of take this role. And this role is a little outside of New York City. This would be in Albany, but I am looking certainly for and this is an American engineering company, and and I've had a few Black people hired there, so they don't have any problems with that. And I would like to see more Blacks who are at a more senior level role to handle this. But one of the issues that I am having is getting more senior level executives. Now, I do get some on the senior development side, and some of them too take those roles. But we are vastly underrepresented there. That there's definitely no question about that. This cannot be denied. And I know some of these other brothers who are someone in these roles know that they're the few that they see out there. So the only way that I see how we can literally do better at doing that is we need, I'm going to say this, more Black staffing firms to really get out here and hire more and get more Black candidates and push them more into these companies.
Yes.
And we have to be on the inside, moving up into these companies in these senior roles to start hiring your own people, because start hiring some of your own folks. And that's generally how it's done. People I see who are getting breaks inside of corporations, Black people tend to be moved up and moved along by the Blacks who are giving them a hand to do that. And that's generally what I've seen, and that's a big part of the problem. And when Mike came up with that pretty devastating statistic of Blacks, with respect to New York, and some of the salary discrepancies, I know quite simply that's a big function of Blacks being at one level in the corporate sector and not really being moved up and advanced in the higher sectors. That's a big difference, because if you come in as let's say a data, an analyst, and then you want to move into a managing director role, there's going to be a $90,000, close to $100,000 difference in those two roles, and a lot of people not getting up to those senior roles more to really show the difference in salaries and or in income, and it's and in your bonus structure that plays into that and all that. This is big. So we have real challenges there. That's something that I would not deny, and we talk about that a lot here on the Black Brain Trust, and it's kind of shocking to me at times as to some of the attitudes you hear from other Blacks with respect to this.
Yes, you are absolutely correct. And my goal is to make sure that it is brought to the highest levels of the Trump administration's attention, because what has happened is all of these staffing firms that you hear about, Tata, Emphasis, Wipro, all of these staffing firms, what they have done is they have used what was supposed to be set aside for Blacks and used it with the companies. The federal companies that are taking the big gigantic contracts, and they go to those companies to fill their so-called minority quotas, when in actuality their minorities are from India. They're being flown here, taking our jobs. They're living 10 to a townhouse, and basically we are being left out, being put out of our homes and left to work at McDonald's and Burger King and Uber and all this other madness. And I'm saying that now is the time. I look around and I say, okay, well, where are our leaders at? And I'll be real with you. I'm from the hood. I was like, where in the hell are our leaders at? What's really going on? And basically my husband had to bring to my attention, Vivian, you are a leader. Okay. It's time for you to start leading and stop worrying about what Jesse Jackson and the rest of them are doing. And I'm like, oh God, I think I'm about to become a leader. You know, I mean, I had to come to grips with that myself and begin to fight on behalf of Black America so we can get our staffing companies and hire our Black brothers and sisters. That's the only way that we're going to be able to do anything about it and heighten our salaries, our home life, not living in jacked up places. This is the only way we're going to be able to do it. And now is the time.
Yeah, you're dead on the money there. I have to say you ain't lied yet. So we are definitely we definitely have to move very actively in that position. But the most key thing is to get more senior Black people into these more senior positions where they can hire a lot more people in that regard. That's a huge problem. We do have your lower tech guys. We do have your help desk people and all of that, you know, and I'm seeing a lot more Black people coming in, certainly on this people who have a former background in Unix and then their Linux and then their Red Hat and so forth. We're seeing a lot more Black people who are very competent there, but getting to the senior SA level and really getting more towards the architecture level and the tech leads and all these guys who are in the position to hire folks, is where we really have to, you know, really integrate ourselves, and that's a challenge because we do have resistance inside of them in many of these large companies for us to do that. That's our challenge.
Hey,
all right,
that is a challenge.
Hey, this is engineer. I'm usually not one to talk on these matters, but I'm just going to say this one time. In terms of the H-1B, yes, there are problems in there, but right now, like everything in this world is complicated, and this problem is not. You're looking at this problem as one bullet solution, H-1B, but the problem isn't just the H-1B. The problem also is the supply and demand. Do we have enough tech, African American or any people of color, tech savvy enough for these positions?
Yes.
And the second question is, if you say yes, then statistically, when you go to the HBCU schools, most enrollments are not African American. Most enrollments are from the H-1B1 individuals, the individuals who are HBCU, and especially within the tech. If you go statistically, go to grad school, HBCU grad schools, most of the PhDs and master students are from other countries, Asian countries, African countries, different countries. And once you groom them, these are the expertise you need in basically formulating new startups, new inventions, new things, new contracts. Again, the federal contract, yes, there are contracts just dedicated to the African American community. But the question is, are you qualified enough to get those contracts? Are you qualified enough for a research contract for dealing with epidemiology, data science?
Yeah, engineer cannabis, this has been discussed before, but
because right now, all I'm hearing is the H-1B is to blame. But again, the complication, like everything in this world, is as dynamic and as complicated as it can be.
No, I think you're missing something here. The tech companies are leveraging the minority status. This is illegal.
No, it is. No, we're getting it.
What we're saying here is that's illegal. You cannot do that, right? So it's not whether or not we have enough Black people to fill the job. It doesn't matter, right?
It doesn't matter supply and demand, but
no.
The world is built on economics, supply and demand.
No. There are stipulations in place that says that this is for a specific group, right? It's for a specific group, but if you can't fill it. Yeah, but if I make a tax incentive for Tesla vehicles, right, or electric vehicles, I cannot give that tax incentive to somebody who goes to a gumball machine and buys an EV tag and sticks it on their Honda Civic. It doesn't work that way. And that's what these tech firms have been doing. And so whether or not we have enough is irrelevant. It's what they've been doing with the stipulations in place.
But America is built on innovation and progress.
No,
Shouldn't supply and demand economics? Isn't the
I would
world
like to say this.
economics? Isn't economics
I
even
would
in
say
the United States the most capitalist country in the world that's built on
they're running
economics?
around the system. Cannabis. They're running. They're trying to end run the system around black folks. And
No,
they're
I
doing
understand that. I
and a
know.
lot of other
but
I get that.
can we deal with the supply and demand
a lot
and
of other
economics
companies are dealing
issue?
with it. Oh, so I just want to say a lot of the companies are dealing with them from an economic perspective because they're cheaper. So they want to end run around them and then bring in these cheaper
No,
H1B.
I get what
you
you're
also have
saying.
you also have less quality of the work, but they're willing to deal with that, man, to with respect to dealing with greater profits.
No, I understand there's a problem.
And running you on that, and that's kind of that.
I understand there's a big problem. I understand there's a big problem in that H1B1.
Yeah, right.
There's a huge problem in that.
What
That's
we're dealing
fine.
with is the legal aspect of it. We're not dealing with the supply and demand issue as of yet.
But at the end of the day,
Well,
that has to be dealt with. Doesn't
can we
have
talk
to be?
about? Can we at least talk about supply and demand?
Go ahead, brother.
Okay. What I'm saying is, good brother, is you are basing your entire discussion on a false narrative. It's not that complex because the supply is there.
Yes.
You have been misled and misinformed to believe that blacks don't have the skills, don't have the
I didn't say
education,
they
don't
didn't
have the
have the
capability.
skills.
No, I'm saying you're saying supply. The supply is here
statistically
in America.
How do you statistically
any other way you
prove-
want to see it. Any way
No,
you
it's
want to
not the
look
way
at
I
it.
want to see it. It's the numbers. The
The numbers
numbers.
are there. Blacks
The
are being disenfranchised regardless of skill set. The corporate America, corporate greed has established this false narrative in the minds of American people that Americans generally are incompetent and incapable, and that's why we've got to bring in foreign workers. That is a lie. That is an absolute lie.
It's not incompetent. It's not
That's the narrative. That's the narrative. You have to go get talent in America because America is not technologically able to do what is needed to be competitive, to be successful, to be all of these things. That is a lie. America is capable and has been capable.
Nobody's saying America is not capable.
I'm just saying the workforce in American workforce is capable of all of these jobs. Foreign workers are being brought in because it's better for the bottom line of corporate America. It's a greed problem.
Greed? No, there's a greed problem in it. Yes,
they're bringing in cheaper foreign labor, and it's okay. From a foreign standpoint, it's okay. Why not come to America and have an opportunity? But I'm saying that it's based on a false narrative. I want to bring everyone's attention to a situation that just happened recently where an Indian worker sued one of the tech companies, and the individual that said that he was discriminated against because he was in this ethnic group that used to be called untouchables. He's saying that because he's in this darker skinned ethnic group of Indian origin, he was discriminated against, removed from jobs, and lost an opportunity. And the company is now on the hook for that because of the two Indian managers, executives who were in a higher ethnic tribe affiliation were guilty of this.
Yeah.
The point that's why this is relevant to us is, what I'm saying is that these Indian nationals come over here with their own bias and racism towards blacks. They have it in their country and they have imported it to the United States. Yes, a large proportion of government IT work is now done by foreign nationals. Corporations have taken on a large proportion of foreign nationals in their IT departments. And I'm saying these biases and these racisms have been incorporated into America. And now we blacks are facing even new type of racism and discrimination, okay, right here in our own country. So we just got to be aware of these false narratives that are being pushed.
Again, I agree with you. But what I'm trying to highlight is this. Yes, there's a problem. Yes, needs to be solved. But at the same time, we need a pipeline where we have a lot of qualified African Americans being funneled.
Yeah, but how do you know that they're not qualified?
No, I don't know. That's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying. We need a funnel.
No. What I'm
to-
saying, what I'm saying here is the premise is that it's not there. What El Bromo is saying, it is there. He's saying,
For instance, okay, look in the go. He's looking for qualified machine learning engineers, right?
yeah, but that's a new technology. What we're talking
New
about
technology
is
or old technology, new technology, we still need people to funnel it. We
no,
need qualified African Americans to funnel into those.
no,
It's
you're
a,
missing the
it's a
point.
fact.
But
Isn't it a fact? We need qualified African Americans funneled for those positions. If we have 20 African Americans going to Nagon saying, hey, I am disqualified, I have Python experience, I know how to write algorithms, I know deep learning, I know this, and you have 20 of them funneled into them, they are more likely to get the job if we present those 20 with those qualifications. So
That's
what
not
I'm
necessarily
saying,
true, brother. That's not necessarily
what
true.
I'm saying is we need to beat both sides.
No, you're missing the point, engineering candidates. We already have the qualified workers. They're being discriminated against for the roles they're already qualified for. It's not whether or not it's not a supply issue. It's not a supply issue. It's a issue of corporate greed and racism, okay, against a particular group, being that of African Americans. We know that these people exist.
No, they do exist, but the question is, do we have? They are not. Okay,
It's not about a machine learning. It's engineer candidates. It's not about a machine learning job. It's the jobs that already exist that Black Americans are already qualified for, that they're being discriminated against for in application. It's not about whatever contracts Nagon has. There are specific jobs that Black people are qualified for being discriminated against in place for Indian nationals or foreign nationals.
That I agree with you. That I agree.
That have been out for a while.
Yeah,
that I agree.
And they're doing end runs around you to grab these Indian nationals who are coming in at H-1Bs. You have also these real strange with these people who have just come out, who were students, who have skills, and they hire them. They call them F3s. I don't know if you even know who those are, but we were dealing with them.
And F1.
Yeah, F1s and F3s, exactly correct. And they bring these folks out, and these folks have baseline learning. They have some base level skills. They're not that good, but they're young and they're very cheap. And,
no, I agree with you. I agree.
You keep it on for a while, and this has been going on a long time, because there was one firm that was trying to work with one of the companies I was working with called Mahindra, and they're another Indian firm like Infosys and all that.
I'm aware of them. Got them on the radar.
And they run them Indians more than Alibaba, boy. I swear to God.
And keep in mind, for 100 years. For 100 years, American corporations it had tremendous success and built America into a world superpower by bringing in young, capable individuals and training them to do the work that was coming forward. In other words, you bring in the people and you get them to do what your company needs to be done. You bring in the skills and the aptitude, and you get it done. This works well. And this is what companies have done. But now, from a greed standpoint, rather than doing that, it's just that we'll go and get someone else and bring them in at a cheaper rate. And that way we don't have to develop talent anymore. We can just go get individuals. That's why so many of these applications and say 10 years experience, 15 years experience. They're doing that because they know that, one, if you got shut out the door from coming into the company, how can you have experience? Okay, you won't have the experience, but they can let someone work somewhere else in another country and say he has the experience, even though the job he was doing is not necessarily match and applicable to what he will be doing in America. So they come here and get Americans to train them, even though they resumes say they have 15 years experience, but the American had to train them to even be able to function here.
Hey, listen, it's so bad. One time I was because I was working with a company, CLS Bank. It was in Manhattan. It's still there, and I had to do pre-interviews for guys, and then send these people over pre-qualified, send them in. We had these Indians coming in, and I was doing the tech interviews, and I had all my tech questions and stuff laid out. So I was teching these guys, And there were a few Indians. A lot of Indians were jumping up. They were jumping up in there, trust me. And I heard one Indian guy, and I listened, and he had an Indian man behind him listening in to the questions and giving him the answers. Giving him the answers to the tech questions. And it was this another cheap Indian guy that they were bringing in who had this basically bloated up resume, and an Indian man behind him, a tech guy, was sitting there specifically designed to give this guy the right answers while he was in, while I was a lot of the tech questions. And I was getting in on some fairly difficult stuff, where we were talking about, C++ and C programming. We were getting into not only the object-oriented design questions, but multi-threading and so forth. Some of this butter-laid shit that you got to have really good skills at. This guy was not qualified, but he had somebody call, speaking into his ear, and I heard it. And then I shut the interview down and I complained about it. I told this guy, I don't want to hear any of these other guys coming over here who have this kind of background and all that. But the company that was sending me the guys over, and the Indian rep was quiet. He was quiet. He didn't have nothing to say. This is the kind of game these guys play. These guys they're playing that kind of game where they will cheat and bring somebody who's unqualified and get somebody else to answer the questions and send them on to the job. And then you have these issues. But they deal with these issues because it saves them money. Now, I would also say this is nothing new. I remember reading a book back when I was in college. They talked about the Italian immigrants who were coming here to New York and were getting involved in construction. And they were saying about Black people have to be concerned about Italians coming into the New York area because they were going to get displaced out of the construction industry by these new immigrants who were coming in, who were, of course, didn't speak as much English, were much cheaper, mind you, cheaper to hire, and then and bring these people in. So and we've seen exactly what happened in the construction industry with the Italians and their mafia and all that later on down the line. But ultimately, this is a problem that Afro-Americans have been dealing with since the turn of the 20th century. So this is going on a long time, and we're seeing this right now in the tech game. And it seems like there are a lot more Mzungus who are being affected by it now. But this is something that we've classically had to deal with, and we have not been in the positions to turn a lot of this around the way we should. But anyway, Mike, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to say that Mzungas have been, collateral damage in these policies, and so
yeah,
they never intended to be the victims as Black people have been, but a bomb went off and they got hit too, and so now they're wounded warriors, so to speak. Let's go to Renaissance man with his hand raised.
Hey, what's up, everyone?
What's going on, brother? Put some volume on your mic.
This better?
Yep.
Yeah. So I was just gonna quickly say a little bit off subject in regards to OPT. I was gonna just say thank you to Vivian for bringing the subject up because I actually got an email earlier this week. I'm applying to business school right now, and that executive order on H-1B visas, that's affected some of the business school applications, as well as people, I guess, who are probably in the middle of their business school curriculum, just because I believe the article said around 30 to 40% of business school was international students, but it was saying OPT was upheld, at least for now. But no, I just wanted to say thank you for bringing it up because it's very much a big thing in business school. They were talking about how many programs have designated STEM to their MBA programs, schools like Harvard, Stanford, MIT, just to get people through that program. So.
All right, let's go to Vivian.
Whoever that was speaking, you're very, very welcome. And I want to also add that it's just not H-1B for IT that's being affected. It's H-1B for construction workers, landscaping, blue collar workers. The steel industry got hit really hard when they outsourced everything. And then they brought it back, and we're trying to get H-1Bs in on that. The OPT program, As far as the Trump administration and I am concerned, we are trying to get rid of it completely because it has been a thorn in the side. It has never been sanctioned by Congress. Obama brought the program in and made it large when he was on his way out. And he really made it really bad for a lot of student graduates. Now they are looking at, and I'll just tell you guys this secret because I love all of you brain trust brothers. I love you. And if there's any girls listening, you too. But what they are trying to do is change the regulations, because even though we won with the executive order, we didn't win because the OPT program got left out and the J1 for the doctors. We're fighting for them as well. Let Dr. Phoenix know, everybody. The OPT program, what has happened is that the universities have come full throttle at the Trump administration.
That's the article was saying.
Yes, full throttle. The big universities, all of them have been coming after Trump because they're saying that if you cut off OPT, then we will not be able to survive. But there's something that my husband brought up to me earlier today that was just common sense. And I'm like, all these brains I have, but I didn't think of that one. And it was that they're supposed to teach education, not be trying to get people jobs. And I'm like, damn, he is so right with that one. That was a good one. That was really a good one. And that is correct. But what they have been doing is they have been monetizing the OPT program to latch it on to the F1, F2, F3, all of those Fs to get all of those people in, which is a back door into the H-1B program.
Well, I was going to say for business schools, I know just from going through the process, they've gone away from placement and saying, hey, if you graduate, we'll place you in a job. But people pretty much go with the intention of, if I want a job, I'll have one at the end, at least if you're talking about a top, 30 program.
Right. And we are in the process of getting rid of that. Also, another problem that has been found out is the OPT program has no federal control, no governmental control. You have the people that are on the grounds at the universities. They have the ability to send as many OPTs out into the world as they want. It could be millions here right now. Nobody knows. So internally, the department that handles that is the DHS, ICE, and Customs and Immigration. No, which one? ICE, whatever ICE is. ICE, Immigration and Customs Enforcement, ICE, is the department that is supposed to be handling that program, but it has been so severely underfunded since the beginning, back in 2001, 2002, that they don't have the capacity to handle all of these colleges and universities that have a designated person on the ground who can actually give an OPT out. On top of, okay, if you graduate, we'll give you the OPT and you go out in the world and find a job, is what they've been doing. So in essence, when the person applies for college in India or China, Russia, Iran, wherever, they are coming in and just, okay, we'll give you an OPT. The problem with that I brought up to the Trump administration is that is a severe national security issue. And it's got to be fixed. I also stated that if you need me, I would come into ICE and revamp the whole entire IT system to handle the universities, the people who actually give out those OPTs, the OPTs themselves, where they are, what country do they come from, where are they at now, how much longer do they have, and are they applying for an H-1B? And if they are, why? Because they're supposed to go back to their home country, not be applying for an H-1B. So I have offered my services to the Trump administration to fix the IT systems. And I'm talking about DevOps, SDLC. I know you know what I'm talking about, computer dude. What's your name? You. I know you know what I'm talking about. The processes, all of the analytics, the performance analytics, any reporting that needs to be brought forth to show how many are here and where they're at and how many, what's the college giving the most out, and do we need to rescind that and all this other crap. The certifications, all of that is on the table now. It's on the table now, and we are going after that. I am, on behalf of Black America. I don't know about nobody, but I am and I'm going to do it. And I'm going to get to Trump one day and tell him to his face. Okay, it's coming. So when you guys see me on TV with Trump, please don't be shocked. Okay, me and El Bromo, actually, it's coming.
Can I bring a little context to what, like they said, with the colleges and the students? Because we know every college promotes the fact that if you come to this school, we will help you, or you will be able to get a job, and this is good. That's why you come here. But let's keep in mind now, the colleges are telling the president that if these students' job programs are cut, we won't be able to get students. They won't come here. And in the context of what we're looking at is, okay, if they don't want to come to America and get an American education, then there's some fraud going on. What right does a college have to sell a displaced American job to a foreign national who wants to get an education? Because that's what we're talking about here. You're bringing in a foreign national, he's paying you for his education to displace an American worker. That's the context, to displace an American worker. So that's not the job of the colleges to displace American workers. Okay, that's not the job of the college to guarantee these individuals that they can come to America and have a job. Their job is to educate these individuals. And the H-1B program is empowering the college to displace American workers. So yes, if the student has every right to compete for a job, to be recommended for a job, to be given leads on a job. But the HB1 program is not any of that. It's all that and more or less, to say that it is empowering the system to give these individuals jobs that displaces American workers. It's not a competition, because the businesses have an incentive to hire them. They don't pay the same benefits. They don't have the same cost structure. It's an incentive to displace American workers. And that's what we're presenting to the administration.
Also, I was going to add, with the international students, it's a money issue in the fact that they will probably pay a higher tuition. That's another way colleges sort of plug shortfalls in funding, is that, as well as if you have schools that are public that will charge out-of-state tuition.
That's excellent. The colleges should benefit. That's what we're saying. They're coming there for education. Okay, fine. Let them come to America, pay the premium price to get this American education. Unfortunately, we know a large portion of these individuals are over here spying and stealing technology, but that's another issue. But let them come to America and pay for their education, and then compete for jobs. But we should not have a mechanism, a pipeline that displaces American workers to their benefit.
All right, let's jump to the next item on the docket. This is from TechCrunch. Trump's worker visa ban will hit Silicon Valley hard. This would be a blow to very early stage tech companies trying to get off the ground. So we just talked about this in the previous article, but for all intents and purposes, all they're doing is whining that we can't hire more foreign nationals for our roles. Yesterday, President Donald Trump released an executive order that extended an existing ban on immigrant work visas through the end of the year. The move prohibits immigrants who are outside of the United States from applying, but because new visas are generally issued in October, the impacts of the new rules will be felt well into 2021. The proclamation specifically targets H-1B and H-2B visas, as well as J and L visas. As a result, the San Francisco Bay Area, with its high concentration of STEM-based industries, could be disproportionately impacted. To better understand the executive order's potential impacts on the startup community and the tech landscape in general, I interviewed TechCrunch contributor Sophie Alcorn, a Silicon Valley-based immigration lawyer. I'm not going to go into this because we already know the ramifications behind this, but Silicon Valley, the tech companies, Cambridge, Massachusetts, I've been talking about them for quite some time, about how these big tech companies come to Cambridge and Boston and they take advantage of these tax incentives where they're supposed to have specific percentage of space available for Black Americans in these underserved communities, and they never fulfill these obligations, and they take the money and they run to another city. Okay, this goes on all the time. The only institution that has actually made a valid commitment to this has been Harvard and MIT. They have been the only ones who actually uphold the obligations, but everyone else is pretty much cut and run. So, all right, let me jump to the next slide.
Mike, I have a question.
Yes, sir.
What I don't understand about the whole conversation is like this. Every company, whether it be Boeing, Microsoft, Intel, IBM, they all have government contracts. Whether it be local, city, when I say local, it could be city, state, or federal government contracts. And on those federal government contracts, the law is written, and there are rules that you have to follow. You know what? Have you found, or did you search for individuals here in the United States that you can hire? And they're gonna answer these questions. Why is it nobody has sued them? They're saying, hey, the court, you're lying because we can find all these people that you didn't hire instead of going overseas to hire people. Why? That's something I don't understand.
Because what they're doing is they're saying, yeah, we have minorities, we have diversity and inclusion. Look at our Indian friends. Look at our Pakistani friends.
Yeah, but if he's being hired from outside the country, he's not a U.S. citizen minority. That's what I'm saying.
I'm not. Vivian could probably answer that better. I'm not involved in that area, but that's the gist that I get from it. Go ahead, Vivian.
Basically, what has been happening is the large companies, Google, Amazon, they all have contracts with the federal government. What they have been doing in order to bring in and have these people working on these contracts who are foreign nationals, they are not Americans, but foreign nationals. What they have been doing is subcontracting with these Tata, Wipro, Infosys, these other staffing companies or consulting companies, Deloitte, all of these companies. When that happens, the federal contractor, the first one that got the actual contract, does not have any allegiance to the federal government to report on the second, third, fourth, fifth, and sixth vendor contractors about who is actually working. Is it how many minorities do they have, or who is actually working at their companies? And that is the excuse that they all have been using for many, 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 many years. So when you see someone who say, I just been displaced by the Tennessee Valley Authority, which just happened and is still happening, even though that is a federal entity, what they are doing is hiring the contractor company to come in and replace those federal workers. The federal workers are training those people, but that company does not have to report any of their numbers of the percentage of Blacks that work for them, the percentage of India versus the percentage of Chinese, because they're under what they call a second tier contract.
Yep.
So and then when they start messing with the second tier, then they start going third, fourth, fifth, sixth. And next thing you know, you end up like Freddie Mac and Fannie Mae here in the greater DC area that has 340 contractors or consulting companies, because the H4 EAD housewife set up a subcontractor company in their house. And now they're running it out of their house and bringing India folks over. So it is a very, and it's legal. It's all legal. But the thing about it that we are taking to the Trump administration is, excuse me, those are our federal dollars. I don't care if you live in the hood. It's still your federal tax dollars that's being spent on this process. What we're saying is change the regulation. Mm-hmm. The regulation. I don't need Congress to do the law. I need you to do the regulation. And that is, if you hire any under all contracts, first, second, third, 500 vendor, it must be a U.S. citizen or naturalized citizen, period. And that's what we're trying to do.
Okay, I got you.
All right. All right, let me jump to the next item on the docket. This is from Bloomberg. Ariel's Roger says the U.S. needs more Black entrepreneurs. Let's hear what he has to say. Fair use.
What is your take on the historical significance of the past few months, from COVID to millions of job losses to the killings of Ahmaud Arbery, Breonna Taylor, and George Floyd, and the protests that have followed?
Well, it's been an extraordinarily difficult, heartbreaking time. And to see so many people lose their jobs, to see the markets collapse the way they did, it's just been remarkable. I think it must be very much like 1968, when we had all the horrible riots after Dr. King's death. And then, of course, when we got into what happened with Bobby Kennedy, and that whole year was just so extraordinarily heartbreaking for our country. This is a similar type of a period for us. When you put together the COVID and the race issues, none of us are resting. None of us are relaxed. There's just stress everywhere.
Interesting similarities to 1968, a very hot year regarding the assassinations and unrest. But does this feel different in terms of any change that we may see from this? Will the change, is it fleeting or is it sustainable?
I'm hopeful this is going to be sustainable for a couple of reasons. I'm having lots of great conversations with many CEOs from companies that we've invested in, to CEOs of the boards that I'm on and that Melody Hobson is on. And we're hearing that they're really serious about change and asking for advice, asking for counsel, and truly listening, which is something that is unique this time. The other thing that's really important, Congress right now is the most progressive Congress we've had in our nation's history. And we have people like Joyce Beatty chairing the subcommittee on diversity and inclusion for the Financial Services Committee. You have Maxine Waters chairing the Financial Services Committee. They both have excellent staffs, talented people. It gives me hope that they're going to be able to take this environment and change lives and change opportunities for African Americans from an economic justice perspective, because that's what often gets lost. Social justice is important, but it's tied also to economic justice.
Definitely. And let's talk about the wealth gap. So the median net worth of a white family is about $171,000. For a Black family, it's about $17,000. So about a tenth for a Black family, according to the Federal Reserve. What does multi-generational wealth and the role of multi-generational wealth, what role does that play in these numbers when we look at net worth?
Multi-generational wealth in this country. We've been going backwards the last 40 years or so. That is one of the key things that I think that people really don't understand, is how much worse it is for African Americans than we were 40 years ago. So we've got to figure out a way to make a dent in that problem. And the way that I think we have to do it is we have to have more Black business leaders in corporate America, but we also have to have more Black successful African American entrepreneurs. Because growing up here in Chicago, when we had George Johnson running Afro Sheen and Ultra Sheen, and John Johnson running Ebony and Jet magazine, they were role models for folks. They hired hundreds of thousands of people. They created enormous philanthropy for our community and political empowerment for our community. We have to go back. If we want to get multi-generational wealth, we've got to have more Black business leaders and more Black successful entrepreneurs of scale.
Do you attribute to the lack of Black executives in the C-suite? I mean, for example, we only have 4 Black men serving as CEOs of Fortune 500 companies, and not a single Black woman. So how do we begin to enter those spaces?
I think it's a couple things. One, if you have successful African-American business leaders and entrepreneurs, the next generation of Black business leaders will come along after them. It's interesting. George Johnson's son, Eric, runs the largest Black company in Chicago. It's a supplier to McDonald's. So decisions that were made to create opportunities for entrepreneurs a generation ago have brought together a new generation of successful entrepreneurs. That's something that's important. But it's also critically important that we get African Americans who are on corporate boards and progressive leaders that are on corporate boards to hold their management teams accountable for diversity and inclusion. Tie it directly to their pay, have a Rooney rule when it comes to hiring, and make sure that when you're in that boardroom, you're confident and comfortable bringing up social justice and economic justice issues when you're in the boardroom. The civil rights agenda often gets left out if you're not courageous enough to go out and speak truth to power and tell the leadership of these corporations that they have to live up to the commitments they've made around diversity and inclusion, not just talk a good game, but really execute.
Now, I know you've been very vocal about this, but is the onus on Black executives to be that voice on corporate boards when there are already so few of us on those corporate boards?
Well, it's just critical. You know, we started a conference 17 years ago with my friend Charles Tribbett from Russell Reynolds, and Deloitte's become our partner. And this last year, we had 200 directors come together. We've had everyone from President Obama and Don Thompson to Jeff Immelt and Jamie Dimon, and from George Lucas to Shonda Rhimes. We've had just extraordinary people come and speak. But most importantly, every year we have what we call the conscience of the conference. Harry Belafonte, John Lewis, Andy Young, Reverend Jackson, Reverend Sharpton, people who actually have dedicated their lives to social justice and economic justice. And they're there to remind all of us that are fortunate to be in the boardroom of the sacrifices that went from prior generations who sacrificed their lives and risked everything to get these doors open for us. And the commitment that they expect of all of us to get in there and fight and fight and fight and speak up, even when you're the only one in the room, even when it's uncomfortable to do. And you see what kind of risk that John Lewis took, and getting his head bashed in, marching, we realize that we as African Americans on corporate boards have a responsibility to speak up and make a difference.
Mm-hmm. So, according to the Alliance for Board Diversity, white women have been the biggest beneficiary when it comes to additional board seats. So what can businesses and corporations do to ensure that their boards are more reflective of society? Why is it that it's so much easier to champion gender diversity when it comes from a lot of our leaders instead of racial diversity? And why is race still that third rail in this country?
Well, I think race is the third rail because of the way that we came to this country. Is we know what's happened over the last 400 years. We've experienced the Jim Crow rules. We saw that whenever we get a little bit of progress, we get sort of knocked back again. My great-grandfather had an extraordinary hotel in Tulsa that was burned down during the Tulsa race riots. So there's this long history where people have not been supportive of African Americans, that we've tried to move ahead and get ahead and bring our communities together in a positive way. There's a lot of studies that you're well aware of around implicit bias and unconscious bias. Too many of the programs talk about supplier diversity, and they think that African Americans can do only the construction, the catering, which are very important businesses, but not giving us an opportunity to participate in the parts of the economy where the wealth's being created today, in finance, in professional services, in technology. That's where the wealth and opportunity is. And those are the areas where we're the least involved and least included. And I think a lot of it is because of this unconscious bias and implicit bias that's still so much part of our society. And we've got to fight it. We've got to change it. We've got to show people that once we're on the playing field, we're going to outperform. And as Reverend Jackson always says, baseball became a better sport once Jackie Robinson started playing and Ernie Banks and Willie Mays followed suit. Well, the same thing is happening with us here in business. Once we're allowed to get on the playing field, we'll show the world that we can deliver excellence in everything that we do. We have the talents and the gift and the depth to really make a difference for all of us.
All right, I didn't want to get flagged for this because they will flag the video, but fair use. Anybody have anything you want to add to this?
Yeah, I'd like to add something very quickly. What he's talking about is very good. The only problem is he was bringing up the Maxine Waters and Jesse and all them. They would what I call the traditional chitterling circuit of the of the Black Leadership Brigade. They're basically looking for handouts. So not much is going to come through them, but I certainly think that as far as more movement from a stronger grassroots view of real business people really putting pressure kind of on the system, and people like Vivian and them who were talking about that, who could who let's say got into the Trump administration and started to bring some of these newer players in, could potentially be much stronger. So I would say the ideas that he's talking about is correct. The chitterling circuit that he just mentioned there of Jesse and Johnny and then the rest of them are not going to do squat, but as except look for their handout and their Sunday walking money. But as far as real movement is concerned, we really have to just continue to work strong at that and get very strong advocates who can really help to certainly increase that. But that standard old guard is I said, unfortunately, there's not much faith in that. I'm sorry to say. But anyway, go ahead.
And let me say, the 800-pound gorilla in the room is still the big word, capital. We are capital short. Our equity, our funds are in white bank accounts. Our work and our labor contributed to the profit margins that built this country's wealth. So when we talk about our money, our capital, it's in their accounts. And unless there's a transfer, an investment.
Are you saying put that in the black banks? Are you saying to put that in the more the black banks and have that?
No, not the banks. What I'm saying that as a people, we are capital poor. We have minimal equity. Okay. Our real estates have been redlined to the point to where GIs came home from World War II and bought houses, but our houses had very little to transfer to the next generation, where theirs grew in equity because of bank redlining. And that's just one technique and one cause of why we are so capital poor. We work hard.
We talk about that here a lot.
Yes, but I'm saying in order to have Black economic growth and development, we need capital.
And I think we should be involved with black banks as well. I think that's a big piece.
Yeah, but the banks don't provide capital. The banks provide loans. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, they can help to get you started if you are. It's not a 100% answer, but I do believe it certainly is part of it.
If you have Black businesses, you're going to have growth in Black banks. Just like if you have Black business growth and development, you're going to have growth in Black employment. We're all the same. If we go up, we're going to benefit the community. Not to mention the extended families, the extended circles around every successful Black person. Everybody with a decent job in the Black community basically has an extended circle around there where they are helping take care of other individuals, whether they're family members or friends or associates. It's just that's how it's been with us. What I'm saying is, as a people, we need capital. And the position we're taking, the position that we're taking, and with the Trump administration is investment. America has to invest in Black community, in Black businesses, and Black potential. Investment, not a handout, but investment. In other words, to go to a bank right now, the government has an 80% loan guarantee for the bank. That's amazing. You need 20%, and the bank puts up the other 80%, and the government guarantees that 80%. Even though the government is guaranteeing that 80%, the banks will scream and holler and kick and draw blood out of you for that 20%. Okay, yeah. Take your house and everything.
And everything. We're helping to fund that too, which is crazy.
Yes. So what we're saying is, we need that 20% to come from the government. We need an investment fund that will allow Blacks to have that 20%. The banks are still getting their 80% guarantee, but we need that capital. That's an investment, because we can write a contract to where a certain portion of the profits will go back into the American till. Americans will get a return. That's going to be much easier for masses of white people to deal with this generation, that they're getting something back for investing in America. As James Brown said, open up the door, I get it myself. We need the capital open up so that we can go out here and use our own ingenuity and talent and ability and drive to be a part of what America is about, which is growth and development.
I've always been a proponent that on this channel that Black people should have all the IT contracts from local city and state government where they reside. And that would allow Black people to have a continuous pipeline into longevity in the tech sector, where they're the ones responsible for the innovation of their state and in the place where they live. And it's unfortunate that they've been squeezed out of this area. It's very unfortunate. Even Latinos have squeezed them out. So let me go to Vivian. She has a hand raised.
I just wanted to say a couple of things on this subject. El Bromo, that's what he's coming in to deal with the Trump administration with, is that investment portion, because that 20%, the Black community just does not have that 20%, because they've done everything to us, but shoot us in the middle of the street, and they're starting to do that even though they've been doing it. But anyway, we're trying to get them to set up that fund so that we can have that investment. Another thing that we're bringing to Trump's attention is the fact of these opportunity zones. You do have a lot of opportunity zones that are helping the Black community. But like you just said, when they start the company, the money immediately goes back into the white folks' hands, because we don't own any IT. We can't give them what they need. And, the services, the IT services that they need in order to be able to keep the money continuously flowing within the Black community, so that we can hire the young people and the older people to come and answer the phones or whatever, to keep that money flowing. And, we have all of these companies, but all of these white business people are coming to them saying, okay, well, I'd like to get the contract for this. I'd like to get the contract for that. Well, they can't funnel the money back to the Black companies, because there are not that many that have been invested in to be able to grow to deal with the new Black startups that are starting up right now in the opportunity zones. So the money is still being flourished back out. And that's one of the things that we wanted to bring to the attention to the Trump administration, along with the HBCUs. We can hire our own Black engineers and architects and whoever else we want to hire. Now that you've given us the longevity of the money flowing through, because we're going to now be educated even more. Yes, we can hire our own. And that's one of the things that we're bringing to the Trump administration. You want to help us, and give us the money back so that we can invest in our own.
Yep. Let me play a couple more minutes of this clip, and then we'll go into the rest of the
country will be stronger because of that.
Fair use.
Definitely. You hit on implicit bias. What are some of the other factors, specifically within the financial services sector and technology and other professional services, that are preventing Black leaders from ascending to the C-suite, or even getting the funding if they've decided to venture on their own, also getting access to capital to fund these startups?
I think that, access to capital is helpful, but to make it in professional services or financial services, you need customers. I started my career as a stockbroker, a financial advisor at William Blair. I was the first African-American professional to work there. And I pretty quickly noticed that all of my friends that were also stockbrokers and financial advisors, they had relationships, multi-generational relationships with people who lived in the North Shore or the Western suburbs. They had aunts and uncles who were CFOs and CEOs and general counsels of big corporations. So they were able to bring in business, generate revenue, and grow their companies. Because of the segregation in Chicago, growing up in the South Side of Chicago like I did, I didn't have those kind of relationships. I didn't have dozens of people that I could call on to help generate revenue as I was making my way at William Blair. I saw the same thing with my mom. My mom was the first African-American woman to graduate from the University of Chicago Law School. And she would get asked to serve on all types of boards, be involved in this and be involved in that, get an honorary degree here, get an honorary degree there. But when she would ask the same white men who wanted her in the boardroom, they'd say, I'd like to be your lawyer. I'd like to generate revenue by practicing law with my skills. They said, no, that's not the right thing. You should be comfortable just being in the boardroom. And that's still a challenge. We have to generate revenue. We need access to customers if we're going to build our businesses in professional services and financial services.
So in that vein, then what are some of the steps? What is the role of the federal government in this? What is the role of prominent businesses and industries such as private equity to ensure that we're seeing more opportunities for people of color?
Well, if you think about it from the private equity standpoint, private equity success stories, they serve on all the boards around the country, corporate boards, university boards, hospital boards, nonprofit boards. They need to be able to say, if we want to have African Americans to be successful, all these institutions that they're on the board of need to be doing business with Black businesses. That's a critical role that private equity people can do. They control hundreds of companies, control hundreds of boards. They can make a difference by fighting for us in that way. The other thing, when you bring up government, of course, the federal government has large pools of assets. PBGC, the National Railroad Trust, the Smithsonian, the Kennedy Center. There's lots of places there where the federal government can push those institutions to do business with Black firms outside of just supplier diversity, to do it in what the University of Chicago calls business diversity and include us in everything they spend money on. And it's basically going back to the way things used to be when we had progressive mayors like Maynard Jackson in Atlanta, who's one of my heroes, Harold Washington here in Chicago, Coleman Young in Detroit. They not only insisted that Black businesses have a chance, they also pushed all their professional services providers, their investment bankers, their lawyers, their accountants, to have Black partners on the relationships with the business that their respective cities were doing. If everyone did that, we would have a virtuous circle, and we would all be able to rise together, all be on the playing field together, bringing our skills and talents to make our country and our cities stronger. So I often say we need to go back to the future, and then again, support the dynamic progressive leaders today that seem to be really getting it, like Congresswoman Beatty and others that I mentioned earlier.
Mm-hmm. Now, you just talked about the purchasing P. You also discussed two other Ps, people and philanthropy. Can you explain their role in also closing the economic gaps that we see today?
It goes without saying, a lot of corporations are doing an excellent job of that. They're starting to understand that they need to give more of their philanthropic dollars to civil rights organizations that care about not only social justice, but economic justice. National Urban League, Rainbow Push, National Action Network, all of those giant organizations that make such a difference for our communities. So I think they're getting the philanthropy. On the people side, we just have to make sure that we're doing a much, much better job of holding managements accountable for the lack of diversity in the C-suite. And you have to tie compensation to it. There are some places that do a great job of that. Northern Trust Bank here.
Renaissance man, you have your hand raised.
Yeah, I just wanted to, it was interesting, his comment on lack of customers as stockbrokers. That was one thing that popped in my head. I was just going to ask Nagone if he ran into that, since I know he used to work on Wall Street for some years.
Mike.
That actually is a great question. I happen to get a lot of customers. I used to throw that white voice on, and I'd get out there and get on the phone, and people thought I didn't think I was who they thought I was, and I was great on the phone. I closed a lot of folks, and I had a very large, and I will admit it, a very large Jewish contingency. I did have a very large Jewish contingency, and they had huge money. And one of my biggest clients was Sam Olstein. He's passed on, but he had over $100 million in the market and was around. And I used to go up to his place all the time. He was up on the Upper East Side, and the hoity-toity section of Manhattan. And he was a super wealthy guy and very open-minded. And I was dealing with a lot of them, so that helped me make some good moves. I had a few athletes as well. Some ball players and a few others who were helping out.
That's that was a big one. I know a guy who when I worked in the athletic department when I was in college, and I know a guy who he actually played and then turned into a broker, and that was his big thing, was trying to get some of his teammates who made it to the NFL to let them manage their money.
Yeah, and I did that. And I had some guys from New York Giants, Joe Morris, and a lot of the guys who I'd gone to school with. So actually Harry Carson and did a little business with LT, but not a great deal. He was doing some other things, getting involved in restaurants and that kind of stuff. So he didn't put a lot of money into the market, but there were other guys who did, and I put them more in. I didn't do a lot of investment banking money. I put a lot of them in municipal bonds, tax-free munis, and that kind of stuff to really preserve their income. And then, after a while, if they were going to do $100,000 in tax immunities, then they would give you $100,000 worth of stock to trade. And then that's helped me run a stock that I controlled on Wall Street called Advanced Orthopedic Technologies. And they helped me with that. And I was able to control the flow and do some wonderful things with that as well and make a lot of money for these guys. But I would say I was a little bit unusual in that regard. We had other black brokers who didn't do as well. And I can't say as to why they didn't, but I did have that, and some other good business people, but most of my clientele was definitely white. Large percent of them were Jewish. And
you were able to close over the phone. You didn't have to they were comfortable doing business with you, not having to meet you in person, at least initially.
Well, that's how a lot of that was done. Yeah, over the phone, absolutely. I remember I had one of my bigger clients, guy named Jack Hook. I just said, hey, listen, I showed you Marvel at XYZ. I showed you Callaway Golf at XYZ. We want to roll with this now at this price. And he's like, okay, book it. 100,000 shares of a stock he bought. He just did it over the phone. Gave me Social Security number and bank. I was just trading this guy. I never talked to him. But when I had to pick up $1 million check for a trading account, from Sam, I had to go meet him there. So I had to go uptown to meet the man. So there were times when you had to meet people, but a lot of these guys, you don't understand the wealth that these people have. I talked to Geffen on the phone. I used to talk to him. He had 300-400 million in the market, and he talked to everybody, so 50,000, 100 grand to him was nothing, but he didn't trade with me, but I had a lot of conversations. David Geffen, I had a lot of conversations with him, but he didn't do anything. He was talking to all kind of brokers and seeing what kind of deals that they would be able to give him. And then I found out this guy was a real IPO guy. And, you had to have really good IPO for him to really open up with this guy. But he was always getting ideas from you. But yeah, during that time, it was all about just talking over the phone and, bringing them good ideas. So you had to talk to a lot of these guys 3 and 4 times before they would do business with you. And that's just how it was done. That's just how. And, you don't understand you have no idea of the wealth a lot of these people that they have individually, or they even have trading accounts that they work with their companies and stuff like that have hundreds of millions of dollars in there. You wouldn't know it. And some of these guys would walk up and you'd see some of these people after a while, because there were a few people who I did meet. I must say, I met maybe 5 or 6. I remember one guy, Marvin LaShawn. He was a very large investor. He was part of the DuPont family. And he had a great degree of money. And you walk up to this guy and you talk with him. I met him, at the Four Seasons. He came into Manhattan. He's from Louisiana, so we came up and I met him at Four Seasons. We hung out there. This was after the due diligence meeting that we had. So I told him to come up to the due diligence meeting and take a look at the, IPO that we were doing. And I meet him there. This guy walked up. This guy was wearing, like regular clothes, nothing.
They look like average Americans. You would never know it if you saw him.
Just looked like we might have thought he was may not have had any money, but this kind of guy, he sit there. Okay, fine, fair enough. All right, let's see what you're gonna do with this. Write your check for 300 grand. Put that in the bank. Put that in your trading account, and let's take it from there. Notify me of every trade. You can't trade this thing by yourself, and let me know everything you're gonna do. Had those kind of things going on. And, that's why I always laugh when I see people go, well, I got this and I got this. I got all this money. All these guys talking, they ain't got shit. These dudes had huge dough and they didn't look like it.
You gotta own something when you're dealing with people like that. It's like, hey, what business do you own?
Yeah. And a lot of them will say, oh, I don't care what color you are, just got to make me money. So if you showed them that you started to make money, they dealt with you. And if you lost the money, you were finished. So you had to make money. And that's the only thing that they really gave a damn about at the end of the day. When it came down to it, is if you were, making money for them. And that's kind of how a lot of them work.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask you is, if you ever bumped into any racism,
Yeah.
But I also thought too, part of getting to that type of wealth is being pretty open-minded to some ideas and catching on to stuff before others do. So,
well, I'm not going to say these guys may not have been racist. Some of them may certainly have had their own ideas, but at the end of the day, when it came to the money, they were more concerned about how that was moving than some of the other things. And plus the firm that I was with you know, at the time I was with A.T. Broad, a New York, you know, fairly well-known New York Stock Exchange firm, and you know, they had, you know, at the time they had a very good reputation, and they were kind of rolling a little bit more with that. So they figured, well, you know, if this nigga fucks up my money, I'm gonna go talk to Al Broad and you know, take it out on him. So that's kind of how they were looking at that, because that's kind of how that game is kind of rigged. So so that was the deal. You know, that was the kind of deal. So I can't say I ran into any of that up front, especially, and when you started making the money, they were very happy about that. So so that's pretty much what it was pretty much all about. And you know, I mean, I did so well for Sam. He made so much money. We invested in some stables in Manhattan, and he gave us $100,000 for that. So he just wrote a check and gave us $100,000 for that. So and then we put that in a whole REIT and sold that and did a lot of interesting stuff with that later on down the line. But yeah, so when you started making these guys money, they rolled with you. But is racism there at that level? Absolutely. You know, because I didn't really run into the biggest guys who I saw who had money were more the athletes and the black business people that I would talk to during that time. And I knew a lot of these guys, Andre Harrell and these people. And you know, well, Puffy and them weren't all that big yet, but Andre and his crew were huge. You know, they had a lot of money, and Andre and them, they were like, nah. They were harder on me than anybody else.
You didn't run into, I don't know, this may be before your time, Reginald F. Lewis and all up there, did you?
Yeah, Reginald Lewis, of course.
Oh wow.
Of course. He was running TLC Beatrice. He was like he was not a man, he was the man in Black America. He was the wealthiest guy. He technically on paper he had $1 billion, and he invested with TLC Beatrice at the time with 90 million of his money, his own money, 90 million, and he and some partners, which was still considerable, but with the buying power that they were able to have and the leverage they were able to get, they were able to leverage that company over $1 billion, and TLC Beatrice ran real strong, and he was yeah, of course, yeah, he was not a man, he was the man.
To this day, Nagon, I think there's some shenanigans between what happened to him, behind what happened to
him and his sucker-late Asian wife.
Oh yeah. I think there's some shenanigans that went on there that took him out. Serious.
Well, yeah, brain cancer at what, like 49 or something like that?
The issues were, you know, we had the cell phones. Cell phones are pretty much new, and I remember I had the cell phone. And when you had those cell phones, they used to burn hot in your hand. Literally, you know, the microwaves that were coming through there was so hot, you know, that after a while I used to have to put my phone down. And I realized, I said, I don't know about this. So then I used to use my earphones to a large extent to talk on my phone at the time. And Reginald Lewis, he would always have his phone stuck to his head. He'd be riding around all over the place with his phone stuck to the side of his head with all those microwaves coming in. So he lived on the phone. I mean, he lived on the phone. So, you know, between his office and driving from one meeting to the next in his limo and phone stuck to his head 24/7, it's entirely possible that easily could have happened to him from that. It's entirely possible, but you know, I didn't particularly like his wife after things had gone on and what happened after. I thought there was a lot of shenanigans there as well. But I don't know if that was a dirty deal on him where somebody took him out. I just think those cell phones at the time were still kind of new, and they were in your hand, and units would run really hot, and you would have a lot of radiation come through those. That we know about that now. Even today, we still keep. That's why I don't talk on my phone at all close to my face. I have everything down. I don't keep anything close to me. Because microwaves, baby, microwaves.
Yeah,
anyway.
I remember. I remember reading the story and just thinking, you know, this guy died when he was like 48, 49. You know, imagine if he lives to like 65, 70, 80.
Yeah, he would have done.
You did all that before 50. I mean, crazy.
Yeah. He would have done remarkable things. He really understood, you know, finance. He understood the international finance game unbelievably. He had unbelievable amount of clients that he was playing with, unbelievable players coming to his company. This guy was tied into everything and everyone. So he was big. He was a very serious player. One of the top guys, you know, at the time Trump and all them knew him. You know, they all were sucking his kneecaps, bro. Trust me when I tell you that, because he had that kind of bread. He was a legitimate billionaire on paper. He was a legitimate $1 billion guy.
All right,
Brilliant.
the next item.
Go ahead.
All right, this is from TechCrunch.com. Squire balances clean fades with the coronavirus. Barbershops are now tech businesses. We're talking about this. As far as pandemic-proof businesses go, a startup for barbershops isn't exactly the first thing that comes to mind, unless you raise millions in just days before barbershops were shut down across the country. Dave Salvin and Sanj Laron, co-founders of New York-based Squire, a back-end barbershop management tool for independent businesses they launched in 2016, raised a $34 million Series B led by CRV in early March, after raising $8 million in Series A round led by Trinity Ventures in 2018. Days later, everything went to zero. LeBron calls of their customer base, all barbershops were closed. The cash quickly went from opportunistic raise to needed capital. Squire waived all subscription fees, created a site for information called www.helpbarbershops.com, and launched a way for patrons to buy online gift cards for their favorite shops. One barbershop sold more than $30,000 in just a few days. After weathering a hard few months, Squire is now enjoying high demand from barbershops preparing to reopen. The company provides cashless payment, a way to make appointments, and is experimenting with a virtual waiting room, all features that barbershops post-pandemic are considering. It is currently live in 45 cities. During shelter in place, some of us have been forced to cut our own hair, as shown by virtual haircuts done over Zoom, and even a venture capitalist hosted haircut workshop. But a do-it-yourself session won't replace the intimacy of a barbershop. Barbershops have long served as gathering places for Black and African American communities, as a place to chat, be vulnerable, and complain. In recent years, the culture has moved into mainstream conversation. Today, there is an entire talk show series produced by LeBron James where guests chat while getting a haircut. In Atlanta, there's a singular Atlanta barbershop that serves as an informal gathering ground for the city's top politicians. We learned it resonated with men from all walks of life, all races and ethnicities, and was really kind of universal experience. So we saw an opportunity for a tech company, LeBron said. Salvin and LeBron thought of barbershops as a place of comfort long before they saw them as a place of business. Barbers are part-time therapists for guys, LeBron said in an interview with TechCrunch. Salvin and LeBron, friends and then students at Columbia who were living in Harlem, saw barbershops grow in cultural relevance while the technology behind them remained largely untouched. Long wait times, cash only, and scheduling woes continue to be problems that they themselves face every time they got their haircut. Squire lets businesses schedule appointments, offer loyalty programs, and install contactless and cashless payment. The team claims that barbershop operations are more complex than many other types of businesses because there are multiple parties transacting, plus customers might check out different services from different barbers all within one service. Might check out different services from different barbers all within one service. That's where Squire comes in to be a point of sales to manage those confusing transactions. We don't want to replace that barbershop, that relationship a guy had with the barbershop, said Salvin. We just wanted to take away all the annoying things about it. Squire makes money by charging a monthly fee based on the size and needs of the barbershop, ranging from $30 to $250 a month. A threat to Squire's success are small and medium business payment infrastructure companies like Square. The co-founders were confident, noting that Squire is the only venture-backed business that exclusively tailors itself to barbershops, and thus will be the best solution for those businesses. Los Angeles-based Boulevard raised money in November for its salon and spa management software. But Squire thinks barbershop subculture is niche enough that salon technology doesn't do the job. Barbers went to partner with businesses that are as rare as that are as passionate as they are. They don't look at it as a job. They look at it as a life calling. LaRon said the high bar is precisely why a healthy chunk of Squire's early days were defined by LaRon and Solvent sitting in barbershop chairs and asking a lot of questions. In fact, Solvent says he got his hair cut by nearly 600 different barbers. Wow. Anyways, we're not going to read the rest of this, but we talked about this many times already, myself, Complex, and a few other people. He's gone now. And we said that pre-pandemic, before the lockdown came in, that Black barbershops would be highly impacted by COVID, okay? They will be the first ones to take the haircut, so to speak, no pun intended. And that they will be highly impacted by all of this. And now you're seeing guys come out here and really figure this out from a technical standpoint.
I would have thought it would have maybe pushed some of those guys into the mobile like van service, just because, you know, drive to you, it'd be a lot easier to clean and maintain versus like, you know, a shop, as well as you don't have all the overhead. So I thought it may have accelerated some of that, the pandemic. Because I know that's a model in, I believe it's Britain. I first saw that, and I was actually talking to my barber last time I went and got a cut about that. As far as the technology goes, it does vary. As far as like the article was talking about, you know, long wait times and appointments and all that, you know, from what I've seen, the more metropolitan big cities, you know, they're much more, you know, on top of things like, you know, booking online and paying with the credit card, you know, using some form of app to conduct those transactions versus, you know, some in the smaller cities or, you know, towns, they're still on that, you know, first come, first serve, go sit and wait for a couple hours or something like that. So
you can't do that anymore now, right? So
not right now because of the pandemic, but not, and I guess in non-pandemic times. So
yeah. What's his name? Chris McDonald in the chat says, nice idea, but how is this Squire any different from simply using Square Appointments, Cash App, and other existing booking apps? Because those apps are fragmented in the sense that they're not centralized. This is a centralized system. This is no different than what's the system that in corporate that they use for booking? It starts with a C. I can't remember it right now. For booking hotels and trips.
Concur.
Yeah, thank you. Concur is what this is basically Concur for barbershops. So that's the difference. Especially if they can figure out a way to tie in cryptocurrencies and tokenization and, you know, rewards and stuff like that. That's going to be a game changer. And unfortunately, a lot of people are not really taking this part seriously. We've talked about this. If you go back 6 months or 7 months in our archive, we were talking about this. We were definitely talking about this, that black people would be highly impacted by a disaster, you know, in terms of a pandemic. They would be hurt if they couldn't run their business.
I was going to add, I think another feature, I don't know if it mentioned this or not, that would be helpful versus, you know, just the standard booking services, is once you can get people to create identities and really track the patterns over, say, a year, and start, you know, looking at your appointments and seeing, you know, you're really analyzing your clientele, like these are your up times, these are your down times, you know, start predicting and figuring out, you know, like planning your vacations around, okay, I know this is, just based on my history, this is a slower week, or, how can I figure out the rank to ramp up customers there? Just the analytics.
Yeah. Yeah. Especially if you get a bad cut from somebody, you may have to give them a thumbs down. You may have to use some emojis to describe that. There's been many times where I've gone to a new barber and my head is bleeding because this guy didn't know what he was doing. I almost cut my head off with a razor. So
yeah, same thing as well as, like you said, with reviews, because right now I know for me moving to a new city, the way I found mine was pretty much Google or Yelp or something like that. So
yeah, and anybody can falsify those those reports. So in a system like this, where people actually made the payments through there, and you imagine you collected some kind of rewards or something like that from your credit card. I have an immense amount of rewards. I think I have like $2,000 in rewards just sitting there. I haven't even touched yet over the last year.
But Mike, you had guys gapping your head up over there, man.
Oh man, this dude from Dominican Republic, man, he didn't know English, so everything I was explaining to him, he misinterpreted it, and my whole man, this dude was so nervous. I'm not sure if he was worried about immigration, but my forehead was bleeding. I had all types of these sort of nano slices in it, man, because this dude didn't know what he was doing, man. So I took a chance, man, trying to support this guy. And
I'd have been humming "Ice, Ice, Baby." I'd have been humming that. Forget about that. You gabbled up my dope piece. Forget about it.
Dang, that's pretty bad. He didn't understand English.
Man, wow.
Most of them don't understand English, Renaissance, man. Most of them don't. So they're not here permanently. They're kind of here just to make some money and send it back home. That's really their objective, So this guy, I couldn't explain to him, and they didn't have a book where you can actually point to different hairstyles. This guy was trying to use the razor on me, man. My whole forehead was...
Oh, jeez.
Yeah, I was pissed, man. So that's happened a couple of times, different barbers who didn't speak English.
Hey, you guys aren't the only ones. We get jacked up with our manicures and pedicures over here with the girls.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah. Especially with the foreign ones, manicure shops. They really will jack you up as a female. And the meat around your nail on your fingers, or when they're doing your feet, if they cut too far deep on your toenails for us to look pretty for you men, yeah, you can get jacked up by them too. Or now, I've never had this happen to me, but you go into a shop and they do not have sanitary issues, and some people have gotten gangrene on their fingers, and from the sanitary issues that some of these shops have had.
Wow.
Yep.
Wow.
So we get jacked up on the girl side too.
Well, do you ever think about El Bromo actually throwing a brick through the window?
No, he'd be too busy cringing off of, you paid what for that? his wallet is hit, so he just tries to slide on down and shake his head.
Yeah, I can dig it. I'm just referring to in Chicago. In Chicago, when they're dissatisfied with their salon's performance, they throw a brick. So they always have a man do it. The next day the women in there still getting their nails done. So
that's true. Oh boy.
We don't have a lot of time, so let's go to this one from Forbes with Robert F. Smith talking about the 2% solution to structural racism in America: fair use.
That's something that you're quietly talked about, quietly taking action. You've been a man of your word. You've been sending corporate leaders something you're calling the 2% solution. Maybe you can explain that. It seems like the idea of reparations, you see being bandied around, and you seem to have a private sector solution for that.
Yes, and I just to articulate it quickly, if you think about, what is the biggest challenge, and there are many challenges in America, but nowhere is structural racism more apparent than in corporate America. And in the case of, and I'll walk through a couple of industries, or at least one industry, you know, the deprivation of capital is one of the areas that creates a major problem to the enablement in African-American communities, Latinx communities, et cetera. And I think when you think about, you know, the idea of reparative, restorative, and regenerative capital, how do you do that? How do you do it effectively? Well, as we were working to re-architect what I'll call the ability to deliver the payroll protection loans through the CARES Act, and enabling a lot of our community development financial institutions and minority-owned banks to deliver capital into these communities, we discovered a few things. One is, you know, that structural racism in the financial services community. There's about 4,700 banks in America. Only 21% only 21 are Black-owned, and they have less than $5 billion in assets. And the total amount of assets in the U.S. commercial banks is $20 trillion. So if you think about structural racism and access to capital, and 70% of African-American communities don't even have a branch bank of any type in those communities, we said, well, why don't we think about how do we address it? Well, one of the first things to do is put capital into those branch banks to lend to these small businesses to actually create an opportunity set. And so if you look at, you know, top 10 banks, $970 billion over the last 10 years of net income. What if you took 2% a year from every one of those banks and said, let's drive that 2% into the, call it the regenerative activity of these CDFIs and MDIs, these small, I call them capillary banks. What effect could that be? Well, there's a number of things that happen. One, it drives, you know, this into the communities. It drives it into these small businesses, which employ 60+% of African Americans anyway, these small businesses. And the average American family gives away 2%. You know, of course, our Giving Pledge members give away a lot more than that. But, you know, 2% feels like the right number, but you do it over 10 years, 2% a year of net income. You can do it through a foundation so that you get, you know, some tax benefits across that. But you use that to not only enable capital infusion into the banking systems and the businesses, but you also have those banks adopt and provide technical assistance and enablement assistance to help those banks actually build more capacity. Those banks don't bank those communities. And so part of me is, all right, here's your responsibility to become more thinking about stakeholder capitalism as opposed to shareholder capitalism. And you can do that across multiple industries. You can do it in healthcare, you can do it in you know, financial services, you can do it in sports. And I think that's the solution. So what I'm in the process of doing is
are you talking about
go
allocation?
ahead, yeah.
Are you talking about allocations or donations?
It can be both. If you think about it, you can actually donate it to a foundation that actually now drives it into tier 1 capital effectively in the financial services industry. So there's different ways to do it. Some you can go direct into the industry. You have to have a place to receive it, but there's food deserts in these same communities. Well, fine, let's look at the biggest, you know, if it's the, you know, Walmarts and Amazons and Whole Foods, say, okay, let's think about corporate responsibility into those communities to drive more effective distribution of high quality food and high quality, low cost foods in those same communities. But that's corporations taking that level of responsibility. So I've been, you know, socializing this with members of the Business Roundtable, World Economic Forum, church leaders, private equity titans, our philanthropic friends, the Giving Pledge, et cetera, youth groups, and a number of our call it social activists, to see if we can build the right sort of coalition to say this is the right thing to do. And, you know, the federal government can play a part in this, but I think we need to have the whole community of business leaders now step up and say, let's do our part.
And do you see this as a public pledge kind of thing, or just something that you do because it's the right thing to do and you do it quietly, but you do it?
I think you do it, but I think if we get the right leaders in each of the industries, they will take pride in what they are doing. They will inspire their other industry, call it competitors, to do the exact same thing. You know, I hope there will be a competition ultimately amongst them to say, let's drive this. Who can create the most efficient way to drive their industry expertise, capital, and revitalization capital into each of the industries in these communities? I think that will show Americans there is hope. There is an opportunity for the American dream to now be revitalized, and frankly, give us all confidence that we can actually make this a better country and a better place to live.
And it could be good business because these are underserved markets and these are people who historically pay back their loans at a higher rate than the average.
You got it. The actual default rate in those communities is actually lower than the FDIC. And, you know, we've had the group of McKinsey working with us, and they said, listen, if you actually activate the wealth and income of the African-American community to the average in the white American community, it increases our GDP by $1.5 trillion a year. Now think about that, right? So that's a dynamic, that's a payback that creates an economic sustainable engine.
All right. Renaissance man has his hand raised.
Looking brilliant.
I was gonna say it's a great idea. The only thing I struggle with is getting people on board to actually follow through with something like this. Maybe it's me being cynical. I kind of think right now you have in general people who are very cynical of corporations and the greed and all of that, to actually think that, and as well, we have an issue with diversity in corporate America, just with getting Black leaders, getting people to actually get on board with something like this and follow through with it. But if he can, it sounds like a good idea.
Anybody else have anything they want to add to this?
Yeah, brilliant. It's brilliant. And he's got the credibility and that kind of thing to really help to drive something like this forward. 2%, and then also giving them some kind of tax incentive to do it where they can, we'll give them a break or, give them a chance to make a little money on it. It's an idea. It's a great idea. And a lot of companies, some will not go for it, but a lot will.
Yeah. Now, the one thing I was going to say too, I think that Evan made a point at the end that if you can get enough people to get on board, then it kind of becomes, one of those things where other companies who may not necessarily agree with it may just do it from peer pressure of, oh, my competitor did it. Well, I don't want to be, looking bad here, especially in the climate we're in. So let me jump in too. So.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. He talked about the capital piece, and El Bromo had been talking about that about an hour ago. These are areas that are easily solvable. It's just the willpower. It's a willpower issue. I think there should be an innovation instead of just the opportunity zone fund. I think there should be an innovation fund for Black tech startups in these coming out of these Black areas. Like I said before, these social enterprises that create social impact in these areas for Black people to solve their own issues.
Yeah, I mean, you have some initiatives right now, like we talking about Silicon Harlem and so forth, where I've been talking to a brother from who's involved with that, and he's been telling me that they actually do have some tech startups that they're actually working with currently right now, and in fact, some of the universities, Cooper Union and Columbia, are actually linking up with some of their students as well, which I really wasn't aware of. So those are two pretty heavy duty players. I'll just put it to you like that. So there is some stuff going on that we are not known about. A lot more of this should be advertised. I'm going to get a lot more on the Silicon Harlem piece. Maybe I'll sit back and kind of let people know kind of what's going on with that in more detail. But later. But we do have some things that are going on. But what I think our brother there, Mr. Wright, was talking about is that on the money. I think that's Robert Smith, is right on the money there, and that's something that I feel should definitely be pushed. And Mike, you're right. There is it's a function of will, and we just need to know a lot more about this and push us a lot more. So, but it's information I think that needs to get out here more so than anything else.
Yeah, Chris McDonald in the chat said he's pushing a South Korea / Japan model of economic development. So, and he said kind of like a Marshall Plan, Robert Smith Marshall Plan, I guess, for Black America. So,
yeah.
Just keep in mind, gentlemen, that white America is looking for solutions. There's a tremendous war going on, of course, politically, ideologically, liberal, progressive, conservatives. There's tremendous battles going out here, but a large portion of this society are looking for answers. And the discussions we're having could be the answers. We can provide the answers, but we kind of have to start looking at ourselves as leaders rather than victims.
Absolutely.
There's a lot of information to try to keep us as viewing ourselves as victims, and to convince the society that we're victims and that we're unable to help them with their problems, because America has problems. These children are on drugs, and this family discipline is breaking down. There's just a lot of issues in the greater society, but we can be that ear that they turn to. We can be providing solutions that basically could better us all.
Absolutely, because
the right focus.
I was going to say everything that's happening to them right now is happening to us already. So we're kind of the canary in the coal mine.
In a large degree, some of this legal stuff it's amazing. These white folks are like, how could this happen? How could that happen? We've been dealing with terroristic prosecutors for 100 years. These prosecutors have unlimited budgets, and they can just create crimes and create charges and railroad us. And that's happening to certain individuals now. Some would even say as high up as the presidency. And this is just what we've been accustomed to, what we've already had to deal with. So it's a shock to some people in the other society. There's a lot of things going on that's just shocking the heck out of them.
Well, that's part of the angst and some of the unrest that you're seeing from them. And they're looking at some of this as we're gonna have to pull some of this back. I saw a very interesting situation just the other day in the news where a black couple were adding some section on to their back patio, and this white woman came out and said that they couldn't do that. They needed a variance to do this, and they said no, we can add on to our back deck, and then she started complaining and arguing about it, and then they had some kind of altercation, but it was not physical. It was just more with words, and the woman said she's going to call the police, and then she went and called the police on over and said the man actually tried to push her and hurt her. And their white neighbors came up and said, no, that wasn't true. This woman's lying. And then the cops said, okay, it was no problem. They left. And then the white neighbors actually got out of their houses and picketed in front of this woman's house as being racist. Their neighbors picketed in front of. I was like, what is going on here?
Karen. She's Karen number 550 million. Karen is what they call those white girls. Karen.
Everywhere.
Yeah. So the neighbors came and picketed. Their own neighbors came in and picketed the white woman. So I was like, what? So there is a lot of angst. There's a lot of angst going on, and I believe El Bromo, what you're saying is definitely has some accuracy, a great degree of accuracy to what you're talking about. So I would have to agree that there's some different things going on now. This is getting to be a bit broader. It's going to come to a head. That's for darn sure. But we are seeing some things that we need to get involved and take advantage of now.
Yeah.
Well, you know what? If I could say something real quick, Mike, what's happening is that the white America is starting to realize that, the same thing we've been doing to Black America all 400 years is now happening to us in many different areas: economics, finance, job placement, moving up the chain of command. They're also being displaced everywhere, and they're starting to realize that they actually need Black America in order to stop the boat from sinking. And they are beginning to reach out and say, we really, really need Black America, and we need some leaders. And that's how I got involved, because, they were looking around and saying Maxine Waters is not going to cut it. John Lewis is past his time. We need somebody. Al Sharpton, it's time for him to go somewhere and sit down. Jesse Jackson, it's past their time.
It
and they're
is, man.
saying, where is Generation X? And then, where's the millennials? Where we got to find some people that can help us with this.
Oh,
And I mean, believe me, I could just sit back and go and make my 6 figures and go by the wayside and live good, but I can't do that because it's like leaving my people behind. I can't do it.
no. I mean, the next millennials and zennial leaders, that's what Black Lives Matter is for. But that's a whole nother discussion. To cultivate these. But the point, the point to what we're talking about tonight. I mean, we've been talking about this for the last couple of years. Many people have said that we were crazy. We didn't know what we were talking about. That somehow, some way, there's no racism in tech. You would have to be living under a rock to say something like that. But the way how you fix it, you come up with these innovation labs. These social impact, social enterprise sort of startups that would actually have Black people fix their own issues. And what comes from that is a lot of innovative ideas of how do you address cultural, political, and economic disparity within your communities. Because the Black communities are a very unique place and very proprietary on the world stage. No one's ever seen or had to deal with something like this, where you extracted a group of people from a continent and brought them here, and then disenfranchise them, and then told them to pull themselves up by their bootstraps. And then when they do, you kind of burn down their communities and redline them and gentrify them and basically kick them while they're down. And then suddenly a hashtag comes out, and every organization on the planet wants to jump on it. We don't need any more symbolism. We need more tangible solutions. And I think that what's coming out of these discussions is actually a lot more tangible than anywhere else in social media. I'm not hearing anybody having these sort of conversations.
I was going to ask Mike, did you, I'm assuming you all have seen the Harlem Capital Partners too.
Yes, we covered them.
Okay. Didn't know. Yeah. That's another group of guys, Harvard MBAs, coming together trying to invest in a number of startups by, I think it was over like 50 or 60 startups over the next few years. So they partner with KKR. So.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
No. The thing is, the money that these big organizations get, these big tech companies, like the previous article we read was saying, for diversity, and they don't follow up on these obligations. They're not committed to these obligations, and they take this money, these tax monies. I think those companies should pay it back. It should go into a community trust for Black communities that they fail to comply with, and then we'll take the money. We'll decide what we're going to do from there. Okay, this idea that America is just run as a business, or these companies are just businesses, and the purpose of a business to make money. We understand all that. Don't insult our intelligence, but there are some obligations that they were supposed to meet, and they failed to do so, and they ran away with the money. No, it doesn't work that way. One person said that we should take them to court, and I'm saying, forget about taking them to court. Shut down their operations immediately. You're not doing any business until we get our money back, or until you comply with these, with these stipulations that you signed up for. Taking them to court doesn't solve anything, because they'll just drag it out until the point where they'll gentrify the community. These people will be gentrified before they even get the money, if that's going to be the case in court. So you got to protest in a way that makes it so embarrassing for them that they just don't have any other choice but to come forward. Anybody else have any last thoughts before we close it out? No,
I would totally agree with what you're saying, and that would be a great answer to part of those issues. That's how you would get money. That's how you would definitely help to fund some of this as well. Those that are definitely not complying, knock them out the box and get that money back, and let's put it to where it can actually do a lot of good for us. And we'll take care of it ourselves. Don't worry about it. We'll take care of it. Give us the money, we'll take care of it, and work with it from that perspective. Yeah, that's it, man. I totally agree. Go ahead, Renaissance.
No, the only thing I was going to add too with regards to the getting money from corporate. Other thing that popped in my head, I don't know how much of how much you can get sort of a nationalistic view from international corporations, but with the U.S. obviously falling further and further behind competitively, really pushing that, hey, if you want to be competitive in the 21st century, you're going to have to use some of this domestic talent and develop it. You can't afford to have this many people sort of being a drain on your society, and you've got to do everything in your power to help them be successful if you want to be America to be successful collectively. So
yeah, when I was over in Africa, they have special economic zones in tech foundries and stuff like that popping up all over the place. I think the continent of Africa has over 800 of these sort of foundries and innovation labs and tech incubators and stuff like that. We don't have anything remotely close to what they're doing over there. And they're supposed to be, living in mud huts and drinking, cholera-based water, and they're doing way better things over there than what we're doing here. And they're years behind us in terms of infrastructure, but from a political political agenda standpoint, they seem to get it. It's only here in America they don't seem to really understand this at all. It's like
no, we do have those who do get it and understand, but you have many who are supposed to be doing okay who will tell you straight out, I don't give a damn. And we have a lot who unfortunately, which is sad to say, just don't care. Where we could benefit a lot more. I guess they're getting their little bit of whatever they're doing, and they do not care.
It's social comparison. I'll never forget. I read a study. They did a study, and they literally said, they did a poll, and they were like, would you rather work in a firm where you make 50,000 and your peers make 25, or work in a firm where you make 100 and your peers make 200? And the majority of people want to make 50 in the firm, even though with their peers making 25, even though they get less money absolute, because it's like social comparison. And I want to be the top dog, even if everyone else is down.
Yeah. I guess there's certain aspects, but of human nature, but what I do see, and as I say, I definitely understand other ethnic groups, and I see how they think. And they do think more collectively because they do understand that will enhance their earnings and their profits as well. They understand this quite well. We have some understanding of it, but we just have a lot of issues because of how we come up in this country and how many of us are trained is to kind of not to work that way and see each other more as a problem than as an asset, and that's. So this is why we have the issues that we do. We have people out here that don't care about you getting killed, don't care about you getting torn out of the frame, these kind of things. They don't care about that. They're not worried about it. They don't think that that's important. And such policies that come up that yield towards that, they don't care about of that either. Absolute insanity, but that's where we are.
Yeah. Now, going back to what you were saying earlier, and going about having people to sell to, imagine if you have just a ton of black clients, successful black clients you can reach out to, and, just endless stream. That just makes everyone's life so much easier.
Yeah. If they're making money, I'm going to make more money. I'm going to help them make more money. And how did that program go years ago with the Wayans boys? More money, more money, more money. That's how that works. And, but we don't practice that as much as we do or should. And, well, we all know what a large part of the issues are. We need to really deal more on solutions than just talking about the problems, because our problems are deep, but we have to, deal more on the solution side of this game, because that's where the answers are. That's how we're going to move forward.
Well, gentlemen, I would like to say that the ending of this conversation is Just building boys and girls clubs and basketball courts that's not going to cut it. Those days are over. That was the 80s when I was in high school, and they were building all these, go to the boys club and all this other madness, girls club. That's not going to cut it in the technology of today, because as soon as our kids walk through their front door, technology smacks them in the face every single time. And they are realizing that, yes, I know a lot about technology, but we have no community coming together, all of us older ones and ones who have made it in life, of saying, okay, well, why we need some on-the-job training. In order to get on-the-job training, we need to have companies. In order to have companies, we need investment. In order to have investment, we need to be sitting on these boards of all these companies and organizations and universities and all these other high places. There's only one problem with that as well. The boards for the universities, the companies, only in the past, I would say 2 years, I even found out where to even go to sign up. That's how well it's hidden. Okay. And I'm saying to our, we look to these basketball players and all these sports players and the Oprah Winfrey's of the world, saying that they're our leaders. They are not our leaders. We are our leaders. We are the leaders. It's us, whether we want to or not. It is us. It is us. And there are many of us out there that don't know that they are the leaders. And that's what I'm saying. I'm here to say, okay, I'm a leader. I'm going to go help you guys lead. And then I'm getting the hell out the way myself. That's not what the leaders of the 60s and 70s did. They didn't get out of the way. They're still there. We've got to get them out of here and come on. Let's come up and lead. We are the leaders. It's our generation that's supposed to be doing this. And so I can't say it any further than, hey, if I'm stepping out there and I'm coming out of my little world, trust me, you guys, I'm coming out of my world and doing this. I'm doing it on behalf of Black America, and I'm hoping and praying that many of you will join me and help, in whatever way that you can, So I'm just saying that I had this, and I'll leave you guys with this thought. I had this old white lady tell me back when I was in high school. She said, your house affects your street affects your community affects your city affects your state affects the United States affects the world. And she said, whether you like it or not, everything that goes on in the world affects your house, period. And that has always been with me, always. And I just leave you guys with that one.
Sounds awesome. Thank you for contributing, and thank you to El Bromo for being on the panel as well, and everyone else who had contributed to the panel. Thank you, and shalom.